In 2020, we released this film, The Conspiracy Theory of Everything, and from the moment it appeared, it was repeatedly and swiftly banned across social media platforms each time we tried to share it. Now, however, Mark Zuckerberg recently appeared on Joe Rogan and stated that in 2020, the Biden administration pressured major technology companies to directly ban and censor large amounts of content, and that, with Trump back in the Oval Office, those restrictions have since been lifted. As a test, we are attempting to republish a version of The Conspiracy Theory of Everything in a more complete form. Watch it while you still can, as it may once again be removed. Welcome to what could very well be one of the most important videos we have ever created. Before we can even properly begin, I must first make this disclaimer. This video presents a collection of hypotheses, an exploration of the world, and while many ideas are examined, what we are sharing here is not intended to be taken as absolute truth. We are not claiming that this is entirely built on verified facts. Rather, we are attempting to explore a deeper, perhaps darker layer of human consciousness, and to step back and view the larger picture of what may truly be happening. Please have your own experience. Do your own research, and do not be afraid to venture further down the rabbit hole. After all, the truth is often far stranger than fiction. There is no denying that the collective human consciousness finds itself in quite a predicament today. It is chaotic, overwhelming itself and much of nature as a result of the internet. We now have almost real-time access to information. Yet most people are only exposed to a narrow slice of the full story. For instance, the algorithms that shape what you encounter on Google, Facebook, YouTube, and nearly every other social network are designed to show you what you are already searching for, or what computer code predicts you want to see based on the behavior of others. Unless you are actively seeking out new information, trying to find something different, or following creators who willingly go down rabbit holes and share their discoveries, what you receive is usually what you are already familiar with. In effect, you only see what you want to see. Additionally, because of the controversial nature of many ideas, especially those labeled as conspiracy theories, a great number of concepts are never seriously examined by the broader public. When people encounter them, they notice the ridicule attached and quickly dismiss these ideas as nonsense or as dangerous extremism. Following the herd mentality makes it easier to avoid exploring unfamiliar perspectives, allowing people to carry on with their lives undisturbed. This matters deeply, because the ability to change one's beliefs can transform one's experience of life. And most individuals are content to let things remain exactly as they are. A smaller group of people, however, feels driven to pursue higher truth at any cost. And many of us know how difficult it can be to empathize with those who choose comfort instead of following their deeper passions. As the saying goes, you can take a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. And attempting to force others to think differently often leads only to frustration for everyone involved. As many ancient texts suggest, this is not how genuine wisdom is transmitted. What emerges instead is a kind of self-created deception and distraction from the larger picture, a picture that is rarely explored. If you are already familiar with spirit science, we have previously discussed how everything is connected. This understanding was even central to my own awakening, during which I had a transcendent experience of all things as one, unified, emerging from, and linked to a single greater whole. Yet today, in the ongoing struggle of human consciousness, most people are simply not seeing this, not looking for it, or not even wanting to look at all. In modern science, many researchers are searching for an all-pervading theory of everything, something that can unify quantum mechanics with the theories of relativity. And so today, we respectfully present to you the conspiracy theory of everything. I invite you to watch with the intention of self-reflection. By the very nature of consciousness itself, pointing fingers and placing blame only perpetuates the same cycle we have long been trapped within. Freeing ourselves from the illusion is the only true way to break the chains that bind us to a lower state of being. Our conspiracy theory of everything begins with the concept of the demiurge. The demiurge is an ancient Greek and Gnostic idea that refers to a form of consciousness believed to be the creator of the physical universe, though not the ultimate or supreme creative source behind all existence. One useful way to approach this idea is through The Matrix, a science fiction narrative that proposes that everything we believe to be the real world is actually an illusion. It depicts a false reality in which most beings are trapped, unable to clearly distinguish what is genuinely real. As people move through their everyday lives, they assume their world is authentic. Yet each individual is, in truth, connected to an artificial construct, cut off from the true world beyond it. While humanity suffers within this illusion, there is immense benefit for those in control, who in the film are portrayed as a form of AI. In relation to our discussion, this artificial intelligence functions as a metaphor for the demiurge. The demiurge was described as a force, a deity, or a conscious presence responsible for shaping the physical world and the reality we experience. However, it effectively overlaid itself upon the true reality, the supreme oneness from which all things originated. In doing so, it became a false god that assumed authority over the world, obscuring living beings, namely us, from the supreme truth, the highest level of creation. It caused humanity to believe that the physical reality we inhabit is the true and authentic reality, even though it is not. Depending on the teachings and interpretations of different Gnostic sects, the demiurge was seen either as a malevolent entity intentionally deceiving humanity, or as a being that was simply ignorant or misguided about its role within the universe and the broader creation. This misunderstanding, intentional or not, resulted in humanity becoming lost within the illusion. Put more simply, the demiurge was considered the force governing the physical universe, and as long as our consciousness perceived the physical world as fully real, we remained enslaved by the illusion of a false, or at least incomplete, reality. Because of this belief, ancient thinkers, particularly those associated with the mystery schools, regarded physical reality itself as an illusion. They sought liberation from this illusion through a wide range of spiritual practices, from meditation to plant medicine ceremonies, and many methods in between. Their goal was to connect with higher levels of existence and escape the false world by discovering the truth, the supreme oneness within. This was possible because even the demiurge and the physical universe were understood to originate from that same supreme oneness, meaning the light of truth could still be accessed from within. The Gnostics referred to this divine spark as Sophia, which means wisdom in Greek. Awakening this inner spark was believed to return the soul to higher realms of existence, and this became the ultimate aim of many Gnostic traditions. From here we can trace the roots of enlightenment and light-based philosophies found across cultures worldwide. These teachings emphasize that even within a world defined by suffering, it is possible to free oneself from illusion through discipline and mastery of the physical, emotional, and mental self. Achieving this state requires significant effort and deliberate intention. In essence, transcendent individuals choose what is difficult, which is why their lives become easier, while those who remain in suffering often choose what is easy, which is why their lives become harder. Fast forward to the present day, and there is an overwhelming number of voices across the internet, exploring ideas, discussing concepts, and sharing an enormous volume of memes. Yet within this noise, a new idea has begun to emerge and gain attention, even within scientific and some mainstream discussions. This idea suggests that the universe as we know it may actually be a hologram or some form of simulation. From a scientific standpoint, when we observe the cosmos through the lens of quantum mechanics, there is broad agreement that the universe does not function in the way we once believed. At the most fundamental level, subatomic particles and waveforms behave in ways that defy classical mechanics, revealing inconsistencies within our understanding of physical laws. Even so, the laws of physics continue to function reliably when applied to the large-scale, macroscopic world we experience every day. Yet the deeper structure of reality appears to operate according to principles we have not yet fully discovered. The concept of a holographic universe, in principle, resembles how a film and a projector work together. When you watch a movie, you experience it as a continuous, linear story, moving through it one image at a time, typically at 24, 30, or 60 frames per second. The scenes unfolding on the screen follow a structured storyline, and broadly speaking, there are clear rules that define the universe you experience within a film. The quantum realm, by contrast, is more like being able to view the entire reel of film outside of time, allowing observation of any moment at once, zooming into single frames, running the sequence backward or forward, and even witnessing sequels and prequels simultaneously. The particles and waves that construct our reality behave in non-linear ways and may even suggest ideas such as retrocausality. Although they operate according to their own rules, those rules differ greatly from the laws governing the macroscopic world we inhabit. A similar comparison can be found in computer programming. What appears on your phone or computer screen at any given moment is a simplified, filtered representation of the deeper processes occurring beneath the surface, intentionally designed to be easy for humans to understand. Beneath that surface, however, exists a level of computer language that is largely incomprehensible to most people. Systems such as binary and raw machine code are too basic on their own to efficiently construct complex algorithms. Instead, programmers rely on higher-level languages that humans can understand, which are then translated downward into machine code and finally into binary at the most fundamental level. What you ultimately see when you look at a screen is built upon vast layers of ones and zeros hidden beneath the digital surface, much like the unseen structures underlying our own reality. You may be familiar with the ancient teaching, "as above, so below." This idea applies across many layers of existence, suggesting that what manifests in higher realms is reflected in lower ones. In the same way, machine code and binary are fully responsible for creating the digital experiences on our devices, even though they exist in an entirely different paradigm from what we directly perceive. This leads to one of the greatest challenges facing modern science today, uniting quantum mechanics with general relativity. We still cannot fully understand how the physical world, tangible matter, continuity, gravity, life, time, and consciousness arise from a field of quantum information that seems to follow a completely different set of principles based on probability and statistics. Yet, just as with computers and machine code, are these realms truly as separate as they appear? This naturally raises the question that many thinkers are exploring today. Could our entire reality be nothing more than a simulation? An artificial environment into which our consciousness is connected? There have been strange incidents caught on camera that some people interpret as glitches in the Matrix. Perhaps these moments are fabricated, who can say? But as an illustration, there is a peculiar clip showing a bird hovering motionless in midair before suddenly flying away. There is also news footage from Russia recorded several years ago in which someone captured what appeared to be a person levitating. When the individual filming called out, the girl dropped to the ground and ran off. Once again, this is not being presented as definitive proof of a real-life matrix, but it certainly invites curiosity, and that curiosity is the heart of the matter. Humanity exists within questions, within the mystery of life itself. These unusual events push us to ask, what is the true nature of reality? With that in mind, I encourage you to conduct your own research, to explore these rabbit holes personally, and to form your own conclusions. In doing so, you become a channel for independent thought, rather than simply following the herd mentality shaped by established powers and society as a whole. Even if the current laws of physics suggest that phenomena like levitation or birds suspended in midair are impossible, we also know that our understanding of physics is incomplete. We still do not know how to properly integrate gravity into the standard model, and uncovering these mysteries could fundamentally alter everything we think we know. This brings us to our central foundation, the point at which our conspiracy theory of everything truly begins, the base upon which all that follows will be built. The demiurge, at its core, serves as a lesson about the illusion of reality, proposing that the world as we understand it is shaped entirely by what we perceive through our physical senses, which represent only a limited slice of the totality of existence across the universe. This perspective suggests that the illusion of the cosmos is incomplete, and as long as we believe only in that illusion, we ourselves remain incomplete. We do indeed live within a material universe, but the cosmos encompasses far more than that alone. As long as we choose to accept only this limited version of reality, we will continue to sustain and reinforce its existence? Is it only by accepting what we do not yet understand, and by learning to ask the right questions, that we can truly loosen the chains that restrain us? In the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, there is extensive discussion portraying the human soul as a light caught within the veil of the night, a symbolic image suggesting that this night represents the illusion of separation, the soul cut off from supreme oneness, or simply imprisoned within illusion itself, meaning anything that falls short of the highest truth. It is the unenlightened mind that actively constructs the reality it believes to be real. In this way, humanity spends its existence moving through darkness, wrapped in the illusion created by its own beliefs, detached from any higher level of reality. This idea was illustrated powerfully in Marvel's Doctor Strange, when Stephen initially rejects anything beyond the material universe and is then shown a brief glimpse of the multidimensional structure of reality, where thoughts themselves are things. He is shown that each of us influences the fabric of reality through conscious intention. Yet as we grow comfortable in the routines that shape our lives, we gradually surrender control of the steering wheel. This leads to an important question: who then is actually steering the ship? Quite literally, it becomes anyone and everything else. Carl Jung referred to this as the collective unconscious, the shared mental field of humanity, where the thoughts and emotions of others influence our own choices and actions through the accumulated weight of their energy. This influence can come from the media, the news, advertising, the opinions of family or friends, or even random things we encounter online. In the end, all of this information is filtered through our egos, which mold our sense of identity as we drift further away from the true nature of our being. So the question arises: what is truth? What is the higher reality? And how do we reconnect with it? Ancient wisdom traditions describe the pursuit of wisdom, enlightenment, or the true nature of existence as an ongoing journey into the unknown. Alongside the realization that we are active participants in shaping our lives, not merely bound to the inherited patterns we have been following. A fundamental truth we must grasp about the demiurge is that we ourselves sustain its existence by believing that the physical universe is the ultimate and final reality. Your beliefs shape the world you experience, as Dr. Bruce Lipton has demonstrated through his work on the biology of belief. The ideas and convictions held within the mind can be scientifically shown to influence how our DNA and cells express themselves. If you believe you are worthless, that nothing will ever improve, and that you will end your life alone and miserable, that belief will shape the life you experience. If you believe you have the power to change the world, that belief will shape a very different life. To escape the limitations we feel have been placed upon us, we must first accept that freedom is possible. We must open ourselves to a greater truth and a greater reality, one that exists beyond the demiurge, and perceive a cosmic understanding that permanently transforms life as we know it. Yet humanity, as a whole, is not paying attention to messages like this, and there is a reason for that. This issue is deeply significant and critical because this single piece of the puzzle must be resolved for humanity to truly evolve as a species and collectively break free from illusion. It is at this point that our conspiracy theory of everything begins to turn dark, and by that I mean profoundly dark. When the soul is disconnected, the ego is left unchecked, and this becomes the source of our suffering and the mechanism through which we are controlled by the elite. For this reason, a warning is necessary. If healing is ever to occur, we must be willing to confront the disturbing aspects of human nature. Light must be brought into darkness, and darkness must be faced directly if we hope to solve our problems once and for all. Be advised that what follows involves mature subject matter and may offend some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. There exists a sickness buried deep within the core of human consciousness, a festering corruption spreading through the hidden underside of modern society, rarely acknowledged or openly discussed, yet serving as the ultimate source of our misery and suffering. This darkness disguises itself behind the surface appearance of the world, presenting the illusion that everything is fine, that life is enjoyable, and that we are all having a good time. However, this illusion is no more real than the demiurge itself, and in truth, the two are reflections of one another. As above, so below. This corruption takes root on multiple levels, and one of its most disturbing expressions appears in the manipulation of sexual energy and in pedophilia. Jeffrey Epstein became the first visible domino to fall. A deeply disturbed individual, or what some might call an empty and soulless ego, who constructed and managed a vast sex trafficking operation involving women and girls, many of them underage. These victims were abused and coerced into sexual acts not only with Epstein himself, but also with other powerful and well-known figures. One of the most prominent names connected to this was Prince Andrew of the British royal family. Following accusations made by a woman named Virginia Roberts, who stated that Epstein forced her to have sex with the prince on at least 3 separate occasions, the weight of the available evidence strongly suggests that Prince Andrew is guilty, and he came close to incriminating himself during his BBC interview while attempting to respond to these allegations. During that interview, Prince Andrew claimed that his last encounter with Epstein was solely to confront him, yet he then admitted to staying at Epstein's residence for 3 days. Throughout that period, young women were reportedly seen entering and leaving the house repeatedly. When asked why he remained there for 3 days, he stated that it was simply a convenient place to stay while he was in town and insisted that he never saw any of these women, despite reports that he was observed receiving a foot massage from a young woman inside the house during that same time frame. Epstein himself functioned as a single falling domino that exposed the existence of a far larger sex trafficking network operating on a global scale. We know with certainty that Bill Clinton had visited Epstein Island, Jeffrey's preferred location for bringing and raping young women. Bill Clinton reportedly went there at least 20 times, while Hillary Clinton is said to have been there at least 6 times, along with a significant list of other high-profile individuals who also traveled to this secluded island in the Virgin Islands. This leads to an unavoidable question: how extensive and how deep does this network truly run? If Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, was so closely tied to Epstein, who else might be linked to this web of pedophiles and rapists? The Epstein scandal was like stumbling over something massive in the dark, and it is up to all of us to pull back the curtain and expose what is really happening. The stories and conspiracy theories surrounding this case extend far beneath the surface, with some suggesting that at the highest levels, the world's ruling elite sustain themselves on the energy of the innocent. According to these claims, acts of pedophilia and rape provide a kind of psychological or energetic high, achieved by stealing purity, destroying innocence, and generating a sense of dominance and control over others through horrifying forms of sexual energy manipulation. While it may be tempting to dismiss these ideas outright, there are certain disturbing anomalies that emerge when examining this material more closely. Perhaps the most notable involve the conspiracies and scandals connected to Hillary Clinton and a specific laptop that previously belonged to former U.S. politician Anthony Weiner. On November 4, 2016, Eric Prince appeared on Breitbart Radio and described what had allegedly been discovered on the Weiner laptop, information that was reportedly being suppressed by Attorney General Lynch. He claimed that investigators uncovered extremely incriminating criminal evidence, including money laundering and assertions that Hillary Clinton had visited the sex island with Jeffrey Epstein. Sidney Powell, speaking at Hillsdale College, publicly criticized the FBI, stating that there was substantial material that could be prosecuted, and that some of the police officers who initially examined the laptop encountered content so disturbing that it made them physically ill. Not long after, the NYPD chief, who was directly involved in the Anthony Weiner laptop investigation, died by suicide. Or at least, that is the story that was presented to the public. Once again, the official narrative tells us that Epstein himself also killed himself. However, closer scrutiny of the circumstances surrounding his death calls that conclusion into serious doubt, suggesting that his death may not have been a suicide at all. Instead, it implies that Epstein possessed information capable of implicating numerous high-level individuals, and that someone ensured he was silenced before he could speak. Regarding Hillary Clinton's emails, many have claimed that certain recurring code words were used to secretly refer to children in relation to bizarre and disturbing events. From there, the conspiracy grows even darker, proposing that at the very top, the control and manipulation of humanity may originate from a non-human source, entities described as reptilian in nature. Within this framework, Epstein is portrayed as nothing more than a deeply broken pawn in a much larger game designed to control and influence the global order. Theories differ widely on whether these reptilians are physical shapeshifters, non-physical beings that manipulate human consciousness, or simply a symbolic scapegoat for something else entirely. This idea was vividly illustrated in the movie They Live, which depicted humans as strange aliens using a signal from a radio tower to conceal their true appearance, while secretly living among us and enslaving mass consciousness. Nevertheless, those believed to be pulling the strings today are commonly referred to as the deep state, a manipulative group said to influence human consciousness through hidden and unethical methods. Setting aside the unanswered questions about who exactly is behind it all, the larger issue becomes how the world's elite are able to influence human consciousness in the first place. Because the systems of control are so numerous and complex, what follows is a lighter overview, and you are encouraged to investigate each of these areas further on your own if you choose. Fear and scarcity play a central role. At the highest level of influence, fear is considered one of the easiest and most effective ways to control large populations. This works as a two-way exchange that binds the power of the elite with the behavior of the public. Because we unknowingly reinforce the system when we live from fear and scarcity, passing it along to one another like a contagious virus. Fear can be used to herd people in countless directions, pushing them to make choices that do not serve their best interests, or persuading them to surrender their personal power and autonomy to others. Food is another major factor. For the most part, much of the food we consume today is described as toxic, intentionally designed to dull our creative energy and make us more susceptible to unhealthy addictions. This includes highly processed foods loaded with salt, sugar, and fat, as well as fruits and vegetables that have been chemically modified or heavily treated with pesticides and herbicides. A frequently cited example is Monsanto, a company that patented seeds and GMO production, restricted the ancient practice of saving seeds, and ultimately gained significant control over the global food supply, all while presenting itself as a solution to world hunger. We recently released a film titled Healing Your Body with Food, Spirit Science 33, which explores the realities of modern food systems and their origins. For that reason, this topic will not be examined in great depth here, as there is far too much to cover. If you wish to explore this subject further, you are encouraged to watch that film once this one concludes. Ultimately, the core idea is that we are what we eat, and many of us consume far too much food overall, along with excessive amounts of substances that may be harmful to our bodies. Fluoride in the water is another commonly discussed mechanism. Some have referred to fluoride as the metaphorical tears of the New World Order, claiming it to be one of the most widespread tools used against the population. In simple terms, the theory suggests that governments add fluoride to public water supplies to negatively impact large populations and enable mass control, either for financial benefit through the health problems it may cause, or by interfering with humanity's connection to spiritual dimensions. A quick search into fluoride-related conspiracies often reveals claims that it calcifies the pineal gland, a small organ in the brain frequently associated with consciousness and the so-called third eye. The connection between the pineal gland and consciousness can be traced back to the French philosopher Descartes, who proposed that the interaction between non-local consciousness and the physical body took place within this gland. When examining the origins of water fluoridation, the story appears complicated and suspicious, often revolving around the aluminum production company Alco. It is said that the company generated large amounts of toxic waste in the form of fluoride as a byproduct of aluminum manufacturing. According to the narrative, after a single biochemist, sponsored by the company, demonstrated in 1939 that fluoride reduced cavities in rats, the first public proposals for fluoridating U.S. water supplies were made, not by medical professionals, but by an industry scientist. Today, water fluoridation exists in more than 24 countries, primarily throughout the Western world. Chemist and researcher Charles E. Perkins, author of The Truth About Water Fluoridation, stated, "Repeated doses of infinitesimal amounts of fluoride will in time reduce an individual's ability to resist domination by slowly poisoning a certain area of the brain, thus making them submissive to the will of those who wish to govern them." While there are unproven claims that fluoride was used by the Nazis in concentration camps or by the USSR in gulags, concerns surrounding fluoride extend beyond speculation alone. Research conducted by Jennifer Luke in the 1990 seconds indicated that by old age, the pineal gland can contain fluoride levels comparable to those found in teeth, suggesting progressive calcification over time. Furthermore, a major review on fluoride toxicity, published by the National Research Council in 2006, reported numerous negative effects associated with fluoride exposure. These included reduced melatonin production and other disruptions to normal pineal gland function, which could in turn contribute to a range of adverse effects in humans. Additional studies from Harvard University and China's Shanghai Health Institute have suggested possible links between fluoride exposure and reduced IQ in children, as well as potential toxicity to the developing brain. Beyond neurological concerns, fluoride has also been associated with certain forms of cancer and has been shown in studies to damage the male reproductive system in rabbits. In the end, the overall assessment is that the balance between potential benefits and risks of water fluoridation remains uncertain due to insufficient high-quality evidence, especially considering that most people are not even aware that fluoride is present in the water they consume every day. If conspiracy theories are to be taken seriously, then academics conducting this kind of research have reportedly faced repeated efforts to undermine their credibility. Stephen Peckham, director of the Centre for Health Services at the University of Kent, and a professor at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine at the University of Toronto, has seen his work on water fluoridation turned away by dental health journals. He has publicly spoken about being accused of manipulating statistics and about research that suggested a connection between fluoride and hypothyroidism. It gives the impression that there may be forces that do not want this information to become widely known. Entertainment and subliminal messaging have long been fertile ground for conspiracy discussions. The entertainment industry has repeatedly been accused of embedding unsettling subliminal messages in children's programming, including references to suicide and sex, appearing in everything from Disney films to SpongeBob. Yet, for many observers, the issue goes much further and into far darker territory. The entertainment world, particularly Disney, has been linked to numerous cases where very young children were hired, turned into massive celebrities, enormous profits were made from them, and the pressure ultimately drove them toward mental breakdowns. A similar pattern has been reported within the K-pop industry, where so-called slave contracts allegedly forced young performers into decades of obligation, demanding endless workdays, and pushing them to the brink of exhaustion. There have been multiple documented cases of these singers collapsing on stage due to extreme fatigue. These issues are often connected back to discussions surrounding pedophilia networks, as several well-known celebrities have spoken openly about how deeply troubling Hollywood can be in this regard, including figures such as Brad Pitt, Elijah Wood, Evan Rachel Wood, and Corey Feldman. The news media also plays a role in shaping perception. News coverage frequently reinforces the idea that conditions are dire and steadily worsening. A persistent tone of toxicity runs through much of the reporting, and when people consume this content en masse, they begin to internalize it and, in turn, help perpetuate it. Those who control the news capture more attention by emphasizing negativity, because bad news attracts more viewers than uplifting stories, and in doing so, this version of reality continues to be reinforced. When you constantly view the world through a negative lens, you stop recognizing your own inner light. In fact, you may forget that such light exists at all. What remains are darkness, shadows, and frightening images. As a result, humanity sinks ever deeper into a reality shaped by its own illusions. It is also worth noting that even local news outlets are often scripted and controlled by a single centralized source, regardless of the network. Simply watching a short compilation makes clear just how severe this issue has become. Our country faces another challenge as well: The circulation of biased and false information has become increasingly common on social media. The spread of slanted and misleading news is now a routine part of online platforms. Mass surveillance represents another major concern. Much of the credit for exposing this reality goes to Edward Snowden, the whistleblower who revealed to the public how intelligence services in the US and UK possessed the capability to monitor virtually everyone, tracking metadata and observing where people go and what they do. One of the first programs exposed was PRISM, which enabled court-approved direct access to Americans' Google and Yahoo accounts and all of their contents. This was followed by Tempora, a British Black Ops surveillance initiative operated by the NSA's UK partner, GCHQ. These efforts included the collection of call databases, phone numbers, text messages, and even a secret court order that compelled Verizon to provide the NSA with millions of Americans' phone records every day. One of Snowden's most alarming statements came in 2013, when he explained that by using the X-Keyscore program, I, sitting at my desk, could wiretap anyone from you or your accountant to a federal judge or even the president if I had a personal email. The NSA's highly classified black budget, obtained by Snowden, exposed both the successes and failures of more than 16 intelligence agencies within the U.S. intelligence community. It also revealed that the NSA was paying private American technology companies for covert access to their communications networks. Overall, it became clear that the NSA was collecting millions of emails and instant messaging contact lists, scanning email content, tracking and mapping cell phone locations, weakening encryption efforts through Bull Run, and using cookies in ways similar to online advertisers to identify targets for government hacking and expand surveillance capabilities. And yet, after all of this information was revealed, it seems to have quietly faded from mainstream conversation. In the end, our belief systems play a role in all of this. At some level, we are doing this to ourselves. There comes a point where we must accept responsibility for our own perceptions and choices. As tempting as it may be to place all the blame on the ruling elite, and there is no doubt that justice must be carried out, we also need to acknowledge that we ourselves are part of the problem through our own beliefs, our herd mentality, our lack of mindfulness, and our unwillingness to genuinely pursue wisdom. If we truly want to become part of the solution, and you have heard this many times before, but now it matters more than ever, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. As Bruce Lipton has shown through his groundbreaking work in epigenetics, our beliefs directly influence our biological systems in profound and deeply impactful ways. If we believe that we can live a joyful and fulfilling life, then that becomes possible. And if we believe that happiness is unattainable, we effectively shut ourselves and our bodies off from receiving and experiencing fulfillment. Furthermore, people often try to pull their friends into their belief systems in order to validate their own views and perspectives. What we are facing, then, is a massive field of collective consciousness that attempts to impose its beliefs on everyone else, causing the truth to become confused and ultimately lost. Broadly speaking, all of this unconscious behavior keeps us limited, and we do it to ourselves. The collective mindset frequently appears to have little interest in education, learning, wisdom, or a genuine connection to truth. And in doing so, it can drive us toward astonishing levels of stupidity. At some point, we must be able to laugh at ourselves. Humans are, after all, famous for doing incredibly foolish things. In the modern world, these moments are often recorded on camera and shared endlessly for everyone to watch, filling Reddit and YouTube channels without end. For example, scrolling through Reddit's What Could Go Wrong channel provides endless amusement at the absurd actions people take every single day. Yet, it also serves as a stark reflection of our general inability to consistently operate from a higher state of consciousness. If we truly want to evolve, we have to do better. From the very top of the hierarchy to the very bottom, it is clear that something is fundamentally wrong. At the start of this chapter, we described a sickness spreading through the underbelly of human consciousness. While we have explored the idea that this sickness may be imposed or sustained by a demonic consciousness, whether that takes the form of sick and twisted psychopaths, a reptilian species, or demonic entities themselves. The reality is that we actively keep it alive by remaining asleep, pessimistic, and disconnected. And this is precisely the nature of this chapter, within the conspiracy theory of everything. When we explore the spiritual path, it becomes evident that we stay complacent because our souls are disconnected. When we live solely from the ego, we exist as self-centered, materialistic, pleasure-seeking beings who have little awareness of, or concern for, the search for anything greater. The soul is the inner voice of truth, love, and compassion. The most authentic and elevated version of who you are. It is the eye of awareness within the heart that connects you to everything, that understands and perceives that all things are interconnected. Yet on a mass scale, there are countless individuals who are disconnected from the soul and do not even believe it exists. As a result, ideas like these are often mocked and dismissed by the majority, which only reinforces a soulless body of human consciousness running unchecked, a body driven entirely by ego. This makes it remarkably easy for the elite to manipulate the collective mind using all the methods we have explored, because we are not functioning from a state of higher collective awareness. Instead, we behave like chickens with our heads cut off. However, if even a brief glimpse of the soul is experienced, which often occurs through lucid dreams, near-death experiences, psychedelic experiences, or other deeply personal transformational moments, an individual is usually changed forever. It becomes extremely difficult to return to the old way of seeing the world once you have felt and understood that you are part of something far greater than yourself, and that your thoughts, emotions, and actions directly influence the reality around you. How can anyone return to ignorance after recognizing a higher truth? We must remain aware that addressing this problem requires action from both ends of the spectrum. Those who are committing crimes against humanity, engaging in mass manipulation, the pedophiles, the rapists, the murderers, all of them must be held accountable and brought to justice. However, if we believe that this alone will fix everything, we are deeply mistaken. If we stay asleep and comfortable, removing one leader simply allows another to step in, and the same cycle repeats endlessly. Because of this, the other half of the equation requires that each of us also takes responsibility to grow our way of thinking, to repair the connection with our soul, and to live as examples of what it truly means to be soulful and compassionate. Yet, even this is only the starting point, because our process of awakening is unfolding alongside the evolution of technology and the arrival of new technologies that will permanently shape the future we are moving into. The topic of extraterrestrials has fascinated and puzzled humanity for countless generations. The question of whether we are alone in the universe has driven us to move forward and to progress as a species in our search for life beyond Earth. Still, judging by how people generally approach the subject, it appears that we have not yet experienced any form of clear, undeniable contact. Even so, the sense that there is a deeper truth, that something is being kept from us, continues to surface through leaks and revelations to this very day. Let's begin with the basics, starting with UFOs, which everyone knows stands for unidentified flying objects, or as they are increasingly referred to today, UAVs, unidentified aerial vehicles. Shortly after the two atomic bombs were detonated during World War II, reports of UFO sightings surged across the globe. In the decade that followed, hundreds of accounts describing UFOs began to surface. Then, in 1947, in Roswell, New Mexico, events took a dramatic turn. Claims of a crashed UFO shaped like a flying disc sparked enormous interest in possible alien involvement, especially as the U.S. military quickly sealed off the area and cleared the site, later explaining it away as nothing more than a weather balloon. This moment marked a true beginning, and today, thanks to advances in technology, particularly cell phones, we now have access to thousands, if not tens of thousands, of UFO sightings from all over the world that appear difficult to explain. One of my personal favorites is the Dome of the Rock incident from 2011, where several unrelated individuals captured footage of a bright, glowing, oscillating orb descending over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. After hovering above the sacred site for several moments, it suddenly shot upward at incredible speed and vanished into the sky. In more recent years, a video that had been leaked sometime earlier was officially released by none other than the Pentagon. It showed 3 separate encounters in which U.S. military pilots attempted to track and pursue extremely fast-moving aerial craft, with no understanding of what they were seeing. Alongside events like these, there is also a long list of former military officials who have stated that they witnessed or even interacted with these objects, confirming that they are real while admitting they have no idea what they actually are. One especially intriguing figure in this discussion is Robert Dean, a retired command sergeant major, who later became a ufologist and spoke openly about his experiences with UFOs and extraterrestrials until his death in 2018. At one point, he gave a presentation, which is still available in full on YouTube, in which he described many of the things he claimed to have witnessed during his time working with the military and NASA. Among these accounts, the most compelling was his description of what allegedly occurred during the real moon landing. Many people today believe that the moon landing itself was a conspiracy, claiming it was staged because of certain details that appear inconsistent, such as why camera crosshairs seem to appear behind certain objects, or why there are strange shapes visible in the reflection of an astronaut's visor. However, what Robert Dean described was different. According to him, there truly was a real moon landing, but when the astronauts arrived, they discovered that the moon was already inhabited. He claimed that small alien beings were walking around and that ships were moving through what we might call air, even though there is no oxygen there. This discovery reportedly shocked the astronauts, who returned to Earth with 40 rolls of film documenting what they had seen, film that NASA allegedly destroyed. The idea seems to be that this truth was considered too extreme, and that NASA chose to bury it out of fear of what might happen if the information were made public. I am not suggesting that hiding the truth is the right course of action, but at the same time, consider how many religious beliefs would be shaken by such a revelation. Consider the level of chaos that could arise if, all at once, our entire global worldview were to change in a single moment. Again, I am not saying that destroying the footage, if it did in fact happen, was a good decision, but at the very least it is worth attempting to view the situation from every possible angle. In particular, there was a former CIA operative who once spoke with AJ+, and she explained that the single most important lesson she learned during her time, essentially working as a spy, was that everyone genuinely believes they are the good guy. So, even if this event truly did occur, whoever at NASA was responsible for controlling all of the information likely acted under the belief that they were doing the right thing. We will return to Robert Dean again soon, because he shared something else that was extremely interesting. However, before that, we need to discuss this. You may already be familiar with a man named Bob Lazar, one of, if not the first individual to come forward with insider leaks about secret government UFO programs. He claimed that in the late 1980s, he was hired to reverse engineer alleged extraterrestrial technology at what he described as a classified site called S4, a location similar to and located quite close to Area 51. He stated that he had direct access to a recovered UFO craft, and that for several years he worked to uncover the secrets behind how it functioned. Lazar asserted that the propulsion system of the vehicle he studied was powered by a chemical element with the atomic number 115, known today as moscovium, or E-115, which at the time was called ununpentium, since it had not yet been created. However, this element was first successfully synthesized in 2003 by a joint team of Russian and American scientists. He explained that the propulsion mechanism relied on a stable isotope of E-115, which allegedly produced a gravity wave once it was excited by livermorium, element 116, during proton bombardment. He argued that the decay products resulting from the interaction between these two elements would include gravitons, a hypothetical quantum particle believed to be responsible for gravity. In his newer Netflix documentary, he used an analogy comparing the craft to a bowling ball. If you were to place a bowling ball on a piece of fabric or a bedsheet and then push down on the areas surrounding it, the ball would roll forward into the curves and depressions you create. In the same way, the craft would essentially fall through space by distorting space-time around it, moving in a continuous rolling motion. According to Lazar, this is what allowed the vehicle to fly and evade visual detection by bending light around itself. He said the craft levitated silently, and when it was activated, he could not even place his hand on it, because the force would repel his hand away, similar to a powerful gravitational field. Based on intelligence he received while working at S4, the ship, which was reportedly one of 9 that the military had access to, originally came from the twin binary star system known as Zeta Reticuli, and belonged to the Greys, the most commonly depicted type of alien that people tend to imagine when thinking about extraterrestrial beings. There is even an emoji representing this image. He also described how the military operated with such extreme secrecy that different divisions studying the craft were not even allowed to communicate with one another, which caused progress in reverse engineering the technology to move at a painfully slow pace. One group would focus on controls, another on propulsion, and another on other systems, and you can see the issue. Because of this separation, they were unable to easily determine how the various components were connected and functioned together, making the reverse engineering process extraordinarily difficult. This challenge was made even greater by the fact that the ship was supposedly fully integrated. There were no obvious moving parts. It appeared to be a single solid object. The seat, floor, panels, and walls were all made from one continuous material, with no sharp edges anywhere. It was an entirely different type of machine than anything we are familiar with today. After Lazar went public with his claims, his life reportedly unraveled. Many people quickly investigated his background and claimed to find that he never possessed the educational degrees he said he had earned. Yet, upon deeper investigation, documents preserved in his former university archives indicated that he was telling the truth. Bob explained that after he came forward publicly, he received a phone call from his former employers, who said, "Do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now that you've done this?" For many years afterward, Bob suffered as much of his past was erased, and he was made to appear foolish in the eyes of the public. Bob's story remains a fascinating one. My strongest recommendation is to watch the documentary he made with Jeremy Corbell titled Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, as well as the Joe Rogan podcast episode they appeared on, where Bob goes into great detail about what happened and what he learned. But Bob is far from the only individual to step forward with compelling and unusual accounts. This naturally leads us to Dr. Stephen Greer, who in 1990 founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, known as CSETI, with the goal of establishing a diplomatic and research-oriented effort to initiate contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. He later went on to create the Disclosure Project in 1993, a research initiative focused on releasing to the public information that the government and military are said to possess regarding the existence of UFOs and ETs. According to the organization, they have gathered more than 3,000 verified reports of UFO sightings from pilots, along with over 4,000 pieces of evidence described as landing traces, which they claim are signs of UFOs touching down on Earth and leaving behind electromagnetic signatures. When this information is considered alongside what Bob Lazar has stated, it becomes entirely plausible that these craft could be capable of bending light, rendering them completely invisible to the human eye, though potentially still detectable by advanced military scanning systems. Dr. Greer also appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast many years ago, where he shared several striking insights from a collection of more than 30 documents originating from the NRO, NSA, CIA, FBI, and presidential briefings. What he came to understand was that the technology behind these craft, and the way these ETs comprehend the universe, is vastly beyond our current level of understanding. He explained that although we presently believe light to be the fastest phenomenon in the universe, this limit may only represent a boundary. Beyond the speed of light, he suggested, exist laws governed by a form of superconsciousness. From this higher state of awareness, interdimensional travel becomes achievable, allowing movement across the universe almost instantly, without being constrained by the speed of light, which is far too slow when traveling from one solar system to another. across the galaxy, or especially between galaxies. This idea is critically important because it connects directly to the notion that consciousness and conscious intention actively influence the fabric of reality, shaping the experiences we have. This is a topic that will be revisited shortly. However, this discussion carries a profound implication. One of the key points Dr. Greer emphasized is that the true importance of alien life for humanity is not really about ETs themselves, but about technology. The moment such technology became available, it would permanently and dramatically transform life on Earth. Imagine suddenly being able to journey to distant planets or explore the universe freely, while also having access to an energy source capable of meeting the entire world's power needs indefinitely. Such power could even be sufficient to destroy a planet if one chose to do so. The implications of this are enormous and may help explain why this technology has allegedly been kept hidden. This raises a critical question. Is this technology concealed so that only secret global rulers can control it? Or is it hidden because humanity is not yet prepared to receive and responsibly use such a gift? One final element within the ET and UFO conspiracy narrative is the idea of a staged alien invasion. This concept traces back to the late Dr. Werner von Braun, the leading Nazi scientist of Hitler's military, who after World War II relocated to the United States to work for the US government, an irony not lost on many observers. On his deathbed, he reportedly warned that following a conflict in the Middle East, there would one day be a fabricated alien attack. According to his theory, this would be part of a covert strategy to weaponize space and establish global control. He allegedly urged Dr. Rosen, his secretary, to prevent this plan at all costs, because if such a scenario were to occur and space became militarized, whoever held control over these forces would possess absolute power, and the world would fall entirely under the rule of oppressors. The topic of VTs does not stop there, however, as it also includes the reptilian conspiracy, most widely popularized by British conspiracy theorist David Icke. This idea has become one of the most notorious and well-known conspiracy theories of all time, inspiring countless parodies and discussions across media and television. In simple terms, Icke claims that an interdimensional race of reptilian beings known as Archons has taken control of Earth and is preventing humanity from realizing its true potential. He has argued that these Archons are the same entities referenced in various Gnostic texts, where they are described as demons and rulers of the 7 planets across different traditions, with the primary goal of trapping souls within the material world. He further claims that these beings have been known by many names throughout history, including the Anunnaki of Sumerian mythology and the Watchers and Nephilim mentioned in the Book of Enoch. According to Icke, human sacrifice in the ancient world was carried out for the benefit of these reptilian entities, particularly the sacrifice of children, because he asserts that at the moment of sacrificial death, a surge of adrenaline moves through the body and accumulates at the base of the brain, and is said to be even more powerful in children, something that today is often compared to adrenochrome. Bringing this idea into a more modern context, he asserts that a genetically modified human Archon hybrid race of shape-shifting reptilians, referred to as the Babylonian Brotherhood, or what we now call the Illuminati or Freemasons, manipulates global events in order to keep humanity in a constant state of fear, allowing the Archons to feed on the negative energy produced by that fear. He has also claimed that members of this hidden elite are descended from reptilian beings originating in the Draco constellation. According to him, these reptilians do not come solely from another planet, but also from another dimension, specifically the lower level of the 4th dimension, which he describes as the astral plane, the realm closest to the physical world. As of 2003, when his books first introduced this theory, he stated that reptilian bloodlines included all American presidents, 3 British prime ministers and 2 Canadian prime ministers, along with several Sumerian kings, Egyptian pharaohs, and numerous celebrities. Remember when that article went viral claiming that Justin Bieber supposedly transformed into a giant reptile in front of a crowd? Some of the most frequently mentioned bloodlines are said to include the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, various wealthy European families, long-established families from the eastern United States, and the British royal family. He even said in multiple interviews that he personally witnessed former British Prime Minister Ted Heath's eyes turn completely jet black while the two men were waiting for a Sky News interview in 1989. In the end, the global elite are described as occupying the top tier of the reptilian hierarchy in the modern world, all with the goal of keeping humanity sedated and confined within this reality without access to higher knowledge. At the very top of this global elite are what Icke has called the prison wardens, figures who oversee humanity in what is, from their perspective, nothing more than a prison planet. Alongside the New World Order, their primary objective is reportedly to create a microchipped population, a one-world government, and a global Orwellian fascist state, a brave new world that he claims will usher in a post-truth era where freedom of speech no longer exists. So, how do they plan to achieve this, you might wonder? If Icke's claims are to be believed, the Brotherhood either created or controls nearly everything. This includes organizations such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the Round Table, the Council on Foreign Relations, Chatham House, the Club of Rome, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderberg Group, as well as the media, the military, the CIA, MI6, Mossad, scientific publications, most religious doctrine, and even the internet itself. In other words, they are said to control every aspect of society and can shape what we believe whenever they choose. Before moving forward, it is important to revisit Bob Dean and the particularly intriguing story he shared during the European Exopolitics Summit in 2009. He explained that he was attending his son's retirement ceremony from the U.S. Navy in Washington, D.C., an event filled with active and retired generals, admirals, captains, and other high-ranking officers. During this gathering, a retired Navy scientist approached him and said, "Hey, I know you. You're that retired Command Sergeant Major who has opened up about the UFOs. I have a story for you, that my last government job was as a plasma fusion physicist at a top-secret place outside of Las Vegas. And I was working there for 5 years with two guys who were not from here. They were from somewhere else. Delightful people, supporting us in figuring out plasma fusion, which equates to infinite energy forever." The man continued, "After a few years of working with these guys, I approached one of them and asked, 'Okay, what do you really think of us, humans as a species?' According to him, the alien replied, 'Well, since you've asked, we think you are a primitive, savage, and dangerous race.' The second alien, who had been listening, then leaned in and added, 'And you also smell bad.' The scientist went on to explain that this was not merely a reference to our physical bodies, although he acknowledged that humans have polluted both their bodies and the earth to an extreme degree, but rather that humanity carries what he called a psychic odor. Our thoughts and emotions are so negative that more advanced species find them deeply offensive. While this account may seem humorous on the surface, it is also something that deserves serious consideration. Based on reports and statements from many whistleblowers, the other species interacting with humanity are described as largely benevolent. If we are truly able to listen to what they are saying and engage in meaningful self-reflection, it could help us clear out our own negativity, free ourselves from reptilian or other controlling influences, and place us in a position where we might one day encounter some truly remarkable, otherworldly beings. Know your customer has become the default slogan of the modern business world. Gather enough data about everyone's web searches and social media behavior, listen to what people say when they think no one is paying attention, and funnel all of that information into a web of computers so intricate that even computer scientists admit they no longer fully understand how it functions. This vast neural network of machines, data streams, and software is then connected to nearly all of us through the apps and online services we rely on every day. From there, it delivers products, media, and recommendations tailored to individual preferences with a level of precision never before achieved. Keeping huge numbers of people constantly engaged on their phones, tablets, and computers like never before. These systems are intentionally engineered to influence our thoughts and emotions, encouraging us to stay on the apps longer, draw in friends and family, and ultimately spend more money along the way. This is the reality we are living in now. What makes it even more striking is how incredibly effective this business model is, while most people remain completely unaware that they are participants in it. So where does humanity go next? Toward a cyberpunk dystopia? As technology continues its rapid advancement, concern is growing among those who manage to step away from the matrix long enough to recognize that something may be wrong. As technological systems evolve and humans become increasingly intertwined with them, the boundary between what is real and what is artificial begins to fade. Then again, if reality itself is an illusion to begin with, does that distinction truly matter? To start this exploration, we can look at a piece of software that already exists today and actively blurs the line between illusion and reality: deepfakes. Technology has now reached a point where we can create convincing videos of almost anyone saying or doing things they would never actually say or do. President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. At present, this technology is still in its early stages, and clips like that one can usually be identified as fake without too much difficulty. But with each passing day, as the tools improve, distinguishing between what is fabricated and what is genuine becomes increasingly difficult. Even now, deepfake technology is being used for harmful purposes, including the creation of pornographic videos featuring celebrities by placing their faces onto other bodies. Over time, we may find ourselves living in a world where the internet is flooded with countless videos of well-known figures, celebrities, and politicians appearing to say things they would never actually say. And what happens when the technology becomes so advanced that no one can tell which version is real? The authentic and the fabricated could exist side by side, each claiming to be the truth. Yet this is only the beginning of a much broader set of technological conspiracies, and of the gradual way we may lose our connection to the world we once knew as we move deeper into newly constructed realities. One of the fastest growing fears today is the idea that powerful institutions are trying to control the population through advanced microchip technology. While our mobile devices already track and monitor our movements and behavior, implanted microchips could theoretically be used to observe and even influence thoughts and emotions on a massive scale, much like Facebook and Google already do in a digital sense. In this scenario, those in power would not simply be watching from the outside. They would have access to everything happening inside, down to the contents of your own thoughts. When this kind of technology is paired with artificial intelligence capable of interpreting complex physiological states, predicting future actions, and shaping perception and decision-making, an unsettling yet plausible reality emerges, one in which humans fully integrate with machines. In many ways, this process has already begun. Algorithms are constantly recording what you search for and feeding that information right back to you in neatly packaged form. However, what is being imagined here would be a far deeper and more invasive level of integration. Even more surprising is the likelihood that people would accept it willingly. Very few individuals would agree to have technology implanted in their bodies solely for the purpose of government surveillance. Instead, much like smartphones today, microchips would become an obvious choice for those eager to gain the advantages they offer. And the cost of entry? Complete access to your personal data, everything you see, think, feel, touch, taste, and experience. But what benefits could possibly justify that exchange? At the most basic level, as Elon Musk has already described with Neuralink, connecting a handful of tiny wires directly to the brain could theoretically alter neural patterns associated with depression or anxiety, and even help repair spinal injuries, among other potential uses. Yet in the broader vision, and with significant innovation, this technology appears to be heading towards something far more radical, a form of direct, almost telepathic connection to the internet itself. When you have a question, rather than pulling out your phone and searching the internet for answers, you could instantly access all the information you want about anything at all. For others who also have the implant, you might find yourself connecting with them in a pseudo-telepathic way, where your thoughts and emotions can be shared directly with others in real time. Communication would move beyond spoken language, instead using images, visuals, and even shared experiences. This kind of connection would allow people to bond both mentally and empathically, potentially bringing humanity closer together. It would also radically transform the education system, because who would need traditional schooling when every piece of knowledge known to humankind could be accessed instantly within your own mind? This chip could, in theory, allow you to download information thousands, if not millions, of times faster than reading books or watching documentaries. Much like Neo in The Matrix, who downloads a lifetime of combat skills and becomes a kung fu master in a single day, this level of integration might be possible with such technology. Imagine wanting to become an exceptional artist, or to learn everything there is to know about programming, quantum mechanics, or even training as a professional accountant or lawyer. Why not simply spend an afternoon or an evening downloading and installing entire courses directly into your mind? You could theoretically compress 6 years of demanding university education into a single weekend and emerge with the same level of understanding, or perhaps even greater knowledge, than someone who studied it the traditional way. As more people merge with technology, this progression could even lead to a collective hive mind, where individual brains function as processors within a shared collective consciousness among all integrated individuals. On one hand, this strongly resembles the Borg from Star Trek. On the other hand, it also echoes many ancient teachings, such as those found in Hermetic texts, along with ideas proposed by figures like Stephen Greer. These perspectives suggest that there is only one consciousness, and although our bodies appear separate and we perceive ourselves as disconnected from one another, in the end, we are all participating in the same consciousness within a universal source field. The arrival of this kind of technology would have earth-shattering consequences for humanity, and life as we know it would never be the same. Personal boundaries and privacy would begin to fade as minds and bodies become increasingly open and interconnected. Yet, as appealing as some of these ideas may sound, the conspiracy still lingers. Who programs the AI that connects directly to our minds? And much like the way Facebook and Google operate today, would this form of mental technology erode our personalities, strip away our individuality, and turn us into something more robotic? When everyone is connected in this way, the boundaries of reality blur even further, forcing us to ask a fundamental question: who are we, really? Still, microchip technology represents only the beginning of how we might connect through technology. Where this path could ultimately lead ventures straight into territory that feels pulled directly from a science fiction film. To understand how this might unfold, let us begin with some relatively subtle innovations that could dramatically reshape the world. Imagine a future where scientists and engineers successfully develop a prototype artificial eye for people who are blind. With a single, straightforward surgery, what seems like a miracle occurs. Individuals who have lived their entire lives without sight suddenly gain the ability to see. But it would not end there. These individuals could then perceive wavelengths of light invisible to normal human vision, possess built-in zoom capabilities that function like binoculars, and even have an augmented reality display integrated directly into their inner visual field. They could literally play Pokémon Go anywhere, without a phone, seeing Pokémon overlaid throughout the real world. When cyborgs are able not only to see, but to see better than those with natural vision, even people with perfectly healthy eyesight would begin to desire such enhancements. This would mark the beginning of a new generation of upgraded humans. On a less invasive level, similar ideas already exist, such as the digital contact lenses depicted in the new Brave New World series. These lenses connect to receptors at the back of the eye, providing a direct mental and visual link to everyone else in society. This same evolution could apply to prosthetics, and in some ways it already has, although the technology is still in its early stages. If someone loses an arm or a leg in a severe accident, they could one day receive bionic limbs that are stronger and more capable than any natural body part, granting super strength or super speed, limited only by what the rest of the biological body can endure. When this technology becomes widely available, it is inevitable that some people will choose to have their arms or legs replaced entirely with bionic components. This concept could be especially relevant in highly classified super soldier experiments carried out by militaries around the world, assuming such work is not already underway. Similar ideas have also been widely popularized through pop culture, such as the cyborg character in Treasure Planet or Ed Elric from Full Metal Alchemist. Shifting now toward fully integrated experiences, let us pause to focus on virtual reality. It is not difficult to imagine that something resembling the Oasis from Ready Player One could be very close to becoming reality. A vast multiplayer online universe that immerses people directly into the experience through VR technology. Such a development could, and very likely would, trigger a kind of mass departure from everyday life, as people begin relocating their lives into this digital environment. Why commute to an office when you could work from virtually any location in the universe? And instead of meeting friends at a bar after work, why not hunt dragons together? Rather than playing racing games on an iPad, why not step inside the race and experience it firsthand? Fully immersive, yet entirely safe, all from the comfort of your own home. Given the amount of suffering in the world and the extraordinary possibilities offered by VR, some individuals might choose a life spent mostly, or even entirely, inside a game. And while everyone is immersed in these digital worlds, what becomes of the real one? If caution is not exercised, we could end up living in a reality similar to Ready Player One, where massive slums expand as people spend less and less time in the physical world. Why bother repairing the real environment when the in-game world is always flawless, beautiful, or at least exactly the way it was designed to be? But even that is not the final stage, because the boundary between what is real and what is virtual may continue to fade until it is no longer visible at all. One day, it may even become possible to transfer your entire consciousness into a game. This idea was powerfully illustrated in a show called Sword Art Online, where a VR headset allowed users to leave their physical bodies behind as they entered a fully virtual reality. Your body remains unconscious, you are completely unaware of it, and you experience existence as if you are physically running through Azeroth, Minecraft, Hyrule, or literally anywhere you choose, as anyone you choose. More recently, this same idea was explored in an episode of Black Mirror, featuring an advanced VR device that appears as a small disc placed on the side of the head, instantly transporting your consciousness into a video game. As you step into a world where you can truly do anything, such as flying, casting magic, embarking on epic quests, or simply spending an entire summer fishing beside a stunning lake in paradise, the question naturally arises: why spend any time in the physical world at all? Do you want a body that is incredibly powerful, or one that is irresistibly attractive? How would you like your face to look? You could customize every detail, freely, exactly to your preference. Because this technology would connect directly to your brain, it could also trigger sensations like intoxication, psychedelic experiences, or even reprogram your thought patterns to function however you desire. If the only remaining reason to disconnect is to eat or use the bathroom, it is almost certain that someone would develop a solution so that even those needs would no longer require leaving the system, allowing you to remain inside indefinitely. This also raises questions about what would happen to your physical body. If your consciousness and brain were reconfigured within the game world, would that process alter your physical appearance in any way? A widespread migration away from the physical world would bring about enormous changes for humanity, as one segment of the population embraces this new reality while another resists it or simply cannot afford access to the game. Furthermore, once brain integration becomes widespread and massive amounts of data are gathered on how people respond to specific stimuli or events, artificial intelligence could expertly filter and modify your perception of reality, or guide your VR experience so precisely that you would rarely, if ever, want to stop using it. All of this technology, especially the act of placing your consciousness inside a game, would eventually grant the creators of that system complete awareness of who you are. Your thoughts, emotions, decisions, everything would be accessible, allowing anyone with sufficient knowledge to monitor you at an extremely intimate level. Yet most people would likely scroll past the 50 to 100 pages of terms of service and click accept anyway, because the promise of flying and shooting fireballs is waiting just beyond the sign-up screen. And when all of these developments reach their peak, As humanity advances far enough to construct fully robotic bodies, if we are able to transfer our consciousness, thoughts, and memories into machines, then we could exist within robotic forms, much like Ultron himself. When that moment arrives, we will be compelled to ask a fundamental question: what truly defines a human being? For some people, all of this already sounds incredible, and they are eager to see what the future will bring. However, the conspiratorial element appears when we begin to ask a deeper question. As we move into the next 100 years of transformation and beyond, who is actually in control? The structure of the internet as we currently experience it is built on algorithms that are largely beyond human comprehension, created almost entirely to serve profit and marketing objectives. Who has power over these algorithms? Who ultimately decides what we are shown? At present, our attention is essentially sold to the highest bidder. But could it be possible that artificial intelligence itself might eventually take control of everything? And if we become integrated into a shared digital mind, could someone simply choose what we think and feel? Even in the earliest days of the internet, people dreamed of free and open access to information transforming the world. While that technology did indeed become available, social media also rose alongside it, allowing some of our most basic instincts, such as tribalism and manipulation, to re-emerge with even greater force than before. To explore this further, we must recognize that we are all responsible for our own actions. Yet when it comes to social media, the way we use this technology is also shaped by those who designed it. In a recent Netflix documentary titled The Social Dilemma, several former employees from major tech companies like Google, Facebook, Instagram, and others came forward to explain what they had unintentionally created through this groundbreaking technology: a monster. They described a world where the lives of billions of people are influenced by the choices of a very small group of programmers. It is a social reality in which the design of apps and software enables tiny, almost invisible shifts in how people think and feel. These changes are so subtle that you rarely notice them happening. Yet the outcome is that many of us end up living inside a distorted bubble, exposed only to content similar to what we have already seen. This software can even encourage negative reactions toward people who hold different beliefs than our own. The technologies, as they explained, are engineered specifically to maximize engagement, keeping you online longer and encouraging you to spend more money simply by continuing to scroll through social media platforms. Take a moment to really think about that. Every single post that appears in your personal social media feed was placed there by an algorithm designed to keep you scrolling, prepare you to spend money on advertisements, or increase engagement by prompting you to interact with others and bring them back to the app as well. A document that was supposedly leaked from a marketing presentation for video games revealed dozens of pages, outlining strategies and techniques that use AI and data collection to analyze individual gamers. These methods were intended to predict when players were most likely to purchase in-game items and to aggressively market offers to them at precisely those moments. Audio data captured by devices allowed the AI to identify the player's gender and emotional state, while Wi-Fi signals could reveal their location, such as whether they were in a car or lying down in their bedroom. The AI also tracked mouse movements and typing speed to assess engagement levels, determining the most effective way to deliver advertisements to each individual. All of this information was fed into AI systems and reviewed by marketing teams to exploit human psychology for the purpose of selling virtual products. The presentation even described using voice tone analysis to determine whether players were slightly, moderately, or severely depressed. Based on that assessment, the system would reduce emotion-based advertisements and switch to logic-based advertising, which was shown to be more effective during periods of depression. You can easily imagine what other strategies might be in use, and when combined with the ability to alter gameplay to influence your emotional state, especially once you begin spending more in their store, it becomes clear that technology can indeed be used to control us. Even if this presentation turned out to be fake, everything described in it falls well within the proven capabilities of AI today. And if these systems have not yet been fully implemented, you can be sure that someone is actively working toward that goal. One of the single most important questions we can ask ourselves in relation to this emerging technology is, What is truth? How do we define truth? And how do we agree on it collectively? Especially in a world where, no matter what you choose to believe, you can always find evidence or support that aligns with your existing perspective. Do you want to believe the earth is flat, round, or hollow? You can easily find plenty of evidence supporting all three perspectives. Are you left-wing, right-wing, or firmly planted in the extreme center? In the online world, it makes no difference. Each of these viewpoints is portrayed as both the most rational, flawless, and sensible way of thinking, and simultaneously as the most harmful mindset, one that is supposedly destroying our beautiful planet all at once, depending entirely on who is speaking. Because of this, the question of truth becomes impossible to ignore. How do we, as a collective species, actually discover truth together? This is a question we will return to later along this journey. When it comes to the modern news and entertainment industries, we already understand that large populations are influenced every single day to think, feel, and react in very specific ways. And when you consider the insights presented in the social dilemma, it becomes clear that social media platforms may also be pushing us toward a hive mind style of behavior. This technology seems to encourage us to stop being distinct individuals and instead function as small components within a vast machine. This is where a serious issue emerges with technological integration. What is preventing AI from altering the nature of who you are, shaped by whoever happens to be advertising to you on a given day, at a deeper level than ever before? In today's world, negative reactions to news or events often generate even more negativity around the same issue. On top of that, the news itself actively amplifies negative stories and press on a daily basis. As a result, even when there is a great deal of good happening in the world, negative narratives consistently attract more attention. From a conspiratorial perspective, there is growing evidence suggesting that consciousness itself plays an active role in shaping reality, that where we place our attention directly influences the kind of life we experience. People who hold hope for the world tend to feel inspired to create, while those who focus primarily on negativity often experience greater anxiety and become trapped in cycles of fear. The coronavirus pandemic offered a clear illustration of this divide. We witnessed widespread separation between those who were fearful, wearing face masks, and constantly worried about spreading the virus, and those who accepted the situation, settled into quarantine, and said, "All right, this is where we are, and I'm going to use this time to create meaningful change, at least within my own life." And many of them did exactly that. If Facebook and Google are shaping the dominant narrative, then they hold enormous power over the direction society ultimately takes. In theory, they could design their systems to promote peace and prosperity across the world. But their primary motivation is profit, which makes perfect sense from a business standpoint. So why would they alter their model? This reality was made unmistakably clear by a personal quote from Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, who stated, "What's good for the world isn't necessarily what's good for Facebook." Yes, he genuinely said that, and he owns one of the largest companies on the planet, influencing the lives of billions of people. Even if humanity were digitally connected with limitless access to information, including ideas like consciousness integration and similar concepts, unless individuals actively chose to download, study, and integrate wisdom and knowledge into their minds, it would still be very easy for our collective focus to be hijacked by advertising, entertainment, or other distractions. This is already happening through social media today, and such mechanisms could easily be used to steer our species in whatever direction is desired by whoever or whatever is pulling the strings. At this stage, it almost feels as though this level of technological integration is unavoidable, and if you feel conflicted about it, you are certainly not alone. On one side, the idea of reading every book you have ever wanted to in a matter of days, learning deeply about yourself and the universe in a short span of time, or mastering kung fu, is incredibly appealing. On the other side, if your mind can be manipulated or forcefully guided in any direction by someone else, then is that really a paradigm we want to participate in? I imagine there will be major turning points for our species as this technology continues to develop. But if we can approach it in an open-source way that preserves each individual's sovereign right to freedom of thought and feeling and allows people to consciously choose what they contribute to the collective mind, then the possibilities become intriguing. I find myself genuinely curious about what outcomes could emerge from that approach. The hopeful aspect of this transition is how closely it mirrors what the internet has already brought us, both positive and negative. If we can learn from our past mistakes and apply that wisdom on a large scale as we move into this new paradigm, then there is still hope. Even if temptation continues to grip the majority, a smaller group can protect the light and help guide others toward an end, a cyberpunk-like reality. Up to this point, we have examined the demiurge, the ways the global population is managed, extraterrestrials, and even the deeply unsettling merging of humanity with technology. Yet, the deeper question remains, why is this unfolding at all? Why is any of this happening in the first place? Is it simply the outcome of a fragmented consciousness spiraling out of control? Is there some hidden meaning beneath the chaos? Is there a final conclusion to our suffering? And if humanity is being guided in a particular direction, who is doing the guiding? Who, if anyone, stands at the very top of the pyramid? Is it aliens? Reptilians? The elite? Or perhaps there is no single authority figure, but instead a vast collection of competing agendas, all moving in different directions? Or could it all be part of God's master plan? Today, the QAnon movement refers to this idea as the deep state. For us, the first time we encountered this concept was through a book published in the early 1990s called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. In that text, they were described as the secret government. According to Melchizedek, this secret government has been aware of the extent of the damage humanity has been inflicting upon itself and the planet since as far back as the 1940s, yet has worked desperately to keep this knowledge hidden from the public, while diverting us away from our higher purpose. The idea of a secret government or deep state helps explain how government agencies can accumulate power through secrecy. Most people today have grown accustomed to, and perhaps even been conditioned into, feeling safe within a democratic system of governance. This system creates the impression that citizens are actively involved in and informed about what is happening. When people believe this, whether it is accurate or not, it fosters trust. However, this level of transparency is not the natural state of power or control. For the vast majority of history, rulers and those in authority were under no obligation to be open with their populations. Secrecy and backdoor dealings were the default, and having fewer people to answer to naturally granted them greater power. Those who seek power flourish through concealment and misdirection. When democracy was introduced in Greece, and later modernized by the United States, it was seen as ingenious, revolutionary, and designed for the people. To safeguard it, the entire ethos of American culture was built around the idea of a more open, citizen-driven government. Over time, this model became the standard across much of the modern world and a source of national pride for countries that achieved it. But what if this sense of pride and security is itself an illusion? A facade concealing the real machinery behind the scenes, a modern human version of the holographic demiurge. What if, operating in the shadows, there exists a force influencing not only the direct actions of the US government and both sides of its political spectrum, but also other nations as well? What if there were a power exerting influence over the US, the UK, Canada, and even China and Russia? Power is restrained in the public eye, but it expands in secrecy. It is therefore natural to ask, if power grows in secret, how can we be sure that those directing the entire performance are not also the most invisible? What if some of the greatest global conflicts and historical events were orchestrated by a hidden world government? Not since the JFK assassination has there been a national tragedy so deeply embedded in the American psyche, or one that has generated as many alternative explanations outside the mainstream narrative. Even though it occurred almost 20 years ago, Over 42% of Americans today believe that the government and the 9/11 Commission concealed or refused to investigate crucial evidence that challenges the official explanation of the attacks. This widespread doubt gave rise to an extensive alternative narrative that spans the period leading up to the attacks, their execution, and the aftermath. One of the most notorious elements of these theories is the claim that the collapse of the towers, particularly Tower 7, was caused by controlled and intentional demolitions rather than by the impact of the planes. This conclusion is often viewed as nearly self-evident, since Building 7 fell at almost the same time as the other two towers, despite no plane coming anywhere near it. Surveys even indicate that many people who watch footage of Building 7 quickly begin to question and doubt the official mainstream account. Looking back a few days before the event, it is alleged that the US government knew about the impending attack days or even weeks in advance and deliberately failed to stop it, or may have intentionally allowed it to occur. This claim has even been supported by Michael Meacher, a former British Environment Minister and a member of Tony Blair's government in the UK. Evidence cited for this includes unusual stock market activity involving the airlines that were hijacked, as a large number of put options were placed on American Airlines and United Airlines in the days leading up to the event. These financial instruments grant their holders profits if the stock price falls. Some economic and financial publications have gone on record stating that there is evidence of unusual options market behavior in the days leading up to September 11th, activity that appears consistent with investors trading based on prior knowledge of the attacks. To put this into context, between September 6th and 7th, the Chicago Board Exchange recorded nearly 4,744 put option contracts purchased in United Airlines. Then, on September 10th, an additional 4,516 put options were bought in American Airlines. Naturally, the 9/11 Commission concluded that this strange trading behavior was merely a coincidence, but regardless of the explanation, those put options generated substantial profits for someone. Another line of suspicion arises from the actions taken that day by NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. There has been extensive speculation about whether NORAD issued a stand-down order to its fighter jets on 9/11, as well as about delays by the FAA in notifying NORAD of the potential threat. According to FAA records, notification to NORAD regarding the hijacking of each aircraft occurred only minutes before the planes ultimately crashed, despite the FAA observing abnormal behavior, such as aircraft veering off course and the transponder on American Airlines Flight 11 being shut off just 16 seconds after takeoff. NORAD was neither alerted nor mobilized for more than 20 minutes. In a nation with the most advanced and comprehensive defense systems in the world, a failure of this magnitude, with such devastating consequences, inevitably deepens the mystery surrounding what truly occurred. This leads into the theory of controlled demolition. This hypothesis claims that explosives planted within the buildings beforehand were the actual cause of the collapse and the extensive destruction that followed. The idea was first publicly shared by Dutch demolition expert Danny Joanko, who in 2006 stated that the impact of the aircraft and the resulting fires could not have weakened the structures enough to trigger collapse. He argued that the buildings would not have collapsed completely, nor at the speeds observed, without an additional source of energy weakening their lower structural components. Based on this analysis, he concluded that the event resembled a controlled demolition carried out by professionals. This perspective has since been echoed by some physicists, engineers, software developers, modelers, and experts from various other disciplines. By contrast, the mainstream explanation maintains that the collapses were caused by damage to key support columns, primarily due to the weakening of floors and columns by jet fuel-fueled fires. And by now, most people have seen the familiar memes referencing jet fuel and steel beams. Stephen Jones, a physicist at Birmingham Young University, along with other researchers, examined dust samples from the World Trade Center buildings and reported finding evidence of nanothermite, materials associated with high-level explosives. When he presented these findings to the National Institute of Technology, officials responded that there was no definitive way to confirm that the dust samples originated from the buildings in question. When he requested that they conduct an independent analysis, the request was denied. In addition, eyewitnesses reported seeing and hearing explosions prior to the collapse of the towers, and the organization International Center for 9/11 Studies has released videos suggesting specific moments when such explosions may be heard. The collapse of Building 7 was also absent from the initial report. And NIST, the agency tasked with investigating the events, took 7 years before publishing any findings that even acknowledged its collapse. Examining who occupied the building at the time reveals several notable tenants, including a covert CIA office on the 25th floor, a branch of the U.S. Secret Service, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and New York City's Emergency Command Center. All of these sensitive offices were lost on the day of the attack. Finally, there is the Pentagon. Some theorists have claimed that the damage inflicted on the Pentagon was not caused by a plane, but possibly by a missile launched from within the U.S. government itself, pointing to the size of the impact zone as evidence. After all, how could an aircraft measuring approximately 125 feet wide and 155 feet long create an opening only about 60 feet across? It is important to note that plane debris has reportedly been found at the site, and multiple eyewitnesses stated that they saw a plane crash into the building. Even among conspiracy theorists, there is no consensus on the missile hypothesis. Still, questions persist. Could witnesses have been paid participants with foreknowledge? Could pieces of the aircraft have been placed afterward? The only publicly available footage comes from a security camera, and conveniently, no clear frames exist showing what actually struck the building. Whatever the reality at the Pentagon, the question remains: how could a plane not only enter the airspace of one of the most secure military locations on Earth, but also successfully strike its most prominent headquarters? Much like Building 7, some theorists propose that damaging evidence of government misconduct was deliberately targeted during the Pentagon attack. When we step back and look at the broader picture, the question becomes why. Why did this occur at all? The most widely circulated explanation is that 9/11 gave the United States and the United Kingdom a justification to engage in war in the Middle East, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan, while also securing motivation and backing from the general public. Many interpretations of this idea claim that the United States was primarily pursuing oil interests in the region, while others argue that a mix of banking, corporate, globalization, and military agendas were at play, all aimed at establishing a globalist system, a one-world order, allegedly managed behind the scenes by the cabal. However, one of the most unusual theories comes from Dr. Michael Saleh, who claims that Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq at the time, had discovered remnants of a stargate constructed by the Anunnaki during excavations at one of the ziggurats, the ancient Mesopotamian temples found in Iraq. According to this account, Hussein threatened to use this device to communicate with the Anunnaki in order to trigger mass disclosure and assert dominance. From this perspective, the orchestration of the 9/11 attacks was a calculated deception designed to justify seizing the Stargate along with other ancient artifacts and technologies and bringing them into Western control. To explore more about this mysterious species, viewers are encouraged to watch our Anunnaki movie on YouTube. If any of these claims hold truth, it would suggest that at that time a hidden government operating across multiple nations may not have wielded as much influence as it desired in certain Middle Eastern countries. Alternatively, if such a secret authority already had full control, then the question arises as to why it would intentionally stage such an event in the first place. When the curtain is pulled back on what may be happening behind the scenes, the implications grow increasingly strange and even disturbing. One of the most infamous mind control experiments ever conducted was MK-Ultra, also known as Project Bluebird. The most alarming aspect of this program is that it was not a theory at all. MK-Ultra was a real, documented CIA operation, and the agency has faced legal consequences for it. It is well established that several of the experiments carried out under the Ultra project were illegal. The United States government knowingly experimented on its own citizens without their awareness or consent. Yet this revelation barely seems to register with the public. Perhaps this is because the true scope of what occurred behind closed doors has never been fully understood. Officially, the stated goal of these human experiments was to develop drugs and techniques for interrogation, methods intended to weaken individuals and force confessions through mind control. The program received formal authorization in 1953, and although its funding was reportedly reduced over time, it continued until its eventual disbandment. Alongside this, there were also the mysterious Montauk experiments conducted at Camp Hero in Montauk, which began in the 1950 seconds. Camp Hero is surrounded by rumors involving mind control, psychedelic drug testing, child abductions, and even time travel. It seems more than coincidental that the activities at Camp Hero emerged in the same decade as other mind control experiments. It is not unreasonable to suggest that these two projects may have been connected in some way. Notably, details about MK Ultra became public in 1975 following an investigation by the Rockefeller Commission. However, attempts to uncover the full history of the program were obstructed by CIA Director Richard Helm's order to destroy all MK Ultra files in 1973. As a result, investigators were forced to depend on sworn testimony from individuals directly involved and on the limited number of documents that escaped destruction. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request revealed a collection of 20,000 documents related to MK Ultra, leading to Senate hearings later that same year. Even as recently as 2018, newly declassified materials included a letter addressed to an unidentified doctor describing experiments on 6 dogs that were made to run, turn, and stop through the use of remote control and implanted brain devices. Estimates suggest that the program's funding and budget would amount to roughly $87.5 million in today's terms. Much of the early research focused on the psychedelic drug LSD and whether it could be used to compel Soviet spies to defect against their will, as well as whether similar tactics could be employed by the Soviets against CIA operatives. In its earliest stages, the program did not test the drug on strong-minded individuals. Instead, initial experiments were conducted on mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and sex workers because, and I quote, "they couldn't fight back," according to Tim Weiner, writing in the New York Times. In one particularly extreme case, LSD was administered to a mental patient in Kentucky for 174 days straight. The drug was also given to CIA employees, military personnel, and most disturbingly, unsuspecting members of the general public, all without their knowledge. Many of these substances were administered without informed consent, a clear violation of the Nuremberg Code established after World War II. This was the only point at which the CIA found itself facing serious legal consequences. It is widely believed that the purpose of this effort was to determine which substances could trigger profound confessions or completely erase a subject's mind, making it possible to reprogram them as obedient, almost robotic agents. At a later stage, another branch of the project operated out of the Veterans Hospital in Menlo Park, where researchers tested the effects of nearly every known psychedelic on the patients housed there. These substances included LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, and cocaine, as well as DMT and AMT, a lesser-known psychedelic with properties similar to DMT. Throughout these trials, severe and harmful reactions were far from rare. In one case, an operative who was unknowingly given LSD in his morning coffee experienced a psychotic break and ran through Washington, perceiving a monster inside every passing car. The experiments did not stop even after the death of Frank Olson, an army chemist who had never used LSD before and was secretly dosed by his supervisor. 9 days later, after falling into deep post-trip depression and paranoia, he plunged to his death from the window of a 13-story hotel room in New York City. While some participants did technically consent, they were often subjected to even more extreme conditions, including being administered LSD for 77 consecutive days. By 1962, the culmination of this research resulted in the CIA developing a range of powerful hallucinogenic substances, most notably the BZ compound, which was believed to offer even greater potential as a tool for mind control. At this stage, many academics and independent researchers involved in the project became disenchanted and withdrew their support. Perhaps the most important lesson to be taken from these revelations is not only the extreme measures used by those operating within the deep state, but also the recognition that while psychedelics can serve as tools for healing and therapy, there is now substantial evidence showing they can also induce darkness and long-lasting psychotic conditions. Everything depends on how these substances are applied, whether they are used to disrupt neurochemistry or to harmonize it with a higher state of consciousness. At the same time, the CIA also conducted extensive experiments with hypnosis. Their objectives included creating hypnotically induced anxieties, enhancing a person's ability to absorb complex information, and increasing memory and overall cognitive performance. To achieve this, the agency established facilities that were, in effect, concentration camps for research purposes. Once again, this revealed both the potential power of hypnosis and the profound terror associated with its misuse, even as it was dismissed in mainstream culture as nothing more than superstition. As Stephen Kinzer has pointed out, in regions under American influence during the early 1950s, particularly in Europe and East Asia, including Japan, Germany, and the Philippines, the CIA set up secret detention sites that allowed the United States to avoid criminal prosecution and operate beyond public scrutiny. Individuals suspected of being enemy agents, along with others deemed expendable, were captured and subjected to various forms of torture and human experimentation. These prisoners were interrogated while being given psychoactive drugs, electroshocked, exposed to extreme temperatures, isolated from sensory input, and subjected to numerous other brutal methods, all in the pursuit of understanding how to break and control the human mind. These experiments almost certainly produced a vast body of knowledge about how the brain reacts under extreme conditions and how it processes and filters consciousness. Yet the question remains, at what cost, and toward what ultimate goal, could this research have influenced major decisions shaping the mainstream narrative, possibly even events like 9/11 or the COVID pandemic? After 1973, when these activities began to enter public awareness, many former subjects or their surviving children filed lawsuits against the federal government for carrying out experiments without consent. Although the government aggressively attempted, and sometimes succeeded, in avoiding legal responsibility, several individuals did receive compensation through court rulings, and the legal struggle continues to this day. Despite the CIA's insistence that MK-Ultra-style programs have been discontinued, Canadian investigative journalist Elizabeth Nixon, whose mother was one of the subjects, maintains that such experiments are still ongoing under a different name. Returning to the origins of the story, MK-Ultra first came to public attention through an investigation by the Rockefeller Commission. In modern discussions about the Illuminati, often portrayed as a hidden ruling power, the Rockefeller family frequently appears near the top of the list of suspected connections. Yet in this instance, it was the Rockefellers who helped expose something deeply disturbing. The lingering question is why? Why would they expose their own operation if they were truly behind it? And could all of this have been orchestrated as part of a single, larger plan? Or could it be that the Rockefellers are engaged in a very different game than people have long assumed? If conspiracy theories are to be taken at face value, it would appear that this hidden government wields immense power, pulling unseen strings and shaping global events from nearly every direction, as though manipulating and steering everything we perceive. In the Flower of Life books, Melchizedek describes how, long ago in ancient Egypt, an ascended master known as Thoth, when something needed to occur for the preservation of humanity, would appear before a specific leader, a pharaoh of that era, and reveal his identity through a miraculous display, such as emitting light or levitating, before instructing the ruler to carry out a particular action. While it is easy to fall into fear and believe that everything is controlled by a malevolent intelligence, the holographic demiurge, could it instead be possible that ascended masters like Jesus, Thoth, or even the Anunnaki have also been quietly guiding and influencing humanity through subtle and mysterious means? According to the sources that support this perspective, while numerous experiments are allegedly taking place behind the scenes alongside major catastrophes affecting Earth's environments, the knowledge and cultivation of the energy within your body, the toroidal energetic field of the heart, and the human light body, often referred to as a Merkaba, grants the power to change everything. Through this awareness, one can heal both oneself and the surrounding world, ease suffering, and help restore peace and harmony. Spirit resides within you, and truly, all things are possible. All that is required is the willingness to learn and to connect with the benevolent divine spark within. The greatest challenge, then, may be that not everyone seeks to form this connection, and it appears that many people simply do not care at all. Yet the most profound part of this story has still not unfolded. As you watch this, if you feel called to anchor yourself in light, truth, and your own inner sovereignty, you are warmly invited to explore the exclusive Spiritverse Academy training program, Activate Your Light Body. This transformative experience is designed to lead you through the activation and expansion of higher consciousness, helping you unlock your fullest spiritual potential. By combining ancient wisdom, energy-based practices, and modern metaphysical understanding, you will learn how to activate your light body and live from that state consistently, maintaining strength, discipline, and elevated awareness each day in a world saturated with illusion. This is not simply another spiritual course. It is a sacred initiation into deeper levels of self-mastery, alignment, and energetic empowerment. Whether you are just starting out or are already well along your spiritual path, this training offers tools, activations, and practices to raise your consciousness and fully embody your light body. Are you prepared to awaken your highest potential? Click the link below to join the Spiritverse Academy and begin your light body activation today. After discussing the idea of a secret government, we begin to glimpse what may be happening behind the curtain of society as a whole. Yet as we go deeper, the narrative takes an unexpected turn, because many of the mysteries associated with this hidden power point to forces that extend far beyond ordinary human comprehension. The struggle for human consciousness may not be limited to humanity alone, but could instead represent a contest for the ultimate powers of the universe itself. Over the past several years, the conspiracy surrounding directed energy weapons has gained traction across the internet. As massive fires erupted around the world, from California to Australia, speculation spread rapidly that these were not natural disasters. Countless videos circulated online, with hundreds of thousands of people sharing footage that appeared to show laser-like beams striking areas shortly before fires ignited. These so-called directed energy weapons, now commonly referred to as DEWs, are believed to be advanced superweapons utilizing satellite systems or stealth aircraft, forming part of a highly concealed militarization of the skies and even the heavens. Looking back nearly a century, it is well known that Nikola Tesla himself explored the concept of a death ray, though his own design was presented as a more neutral particle beam, developed under the code name Teleforce. This proposed device was said to accelerate small pellets or slugs of material to extreme speeds within a vacuum chamber using electrostatic repulsion before launching them through targeted nozzles toward their objectives. When discussing this invention in 1934, he explained that many thousands of horsepower could be transmitted through a stream thinner than a hair, making it something that nothing could withstand. It went on to claim that, at least in theory, such a device could take down a fleet of 10,000 enemy aircraft from a distance of 200 miles beyond a defending nation's border and could cause entire armies to collapse where they stand, ultimately promoting the idea that it would be a weapon capable of ending all wars. We also know that after Tesla passed away, John Trump was brought in by the Office of Alien Custody and reportedly discovered a component of Tesla's so-called death ray, a 4-5-year-old, multi-decade resistance box, an instrument designed to replicate different electrical values within a circuit. This raises the question of whether Tesla's particle beam concept laid the foundation for what are now referred to as DEWs. And if that is the case, why would such technology be used to ignite the fires in California and possibly Australia? The first major moment when DWs entered public discussion was in 2017, when Napa, California, experienced the largest wildfire in its history. Following that event, countless YouTube investigations emerged, examining videos and photographs that appeared to show fires skipping over houses and trees, while burning in straight, unnatural lines through entire neighborhoods. The following year, on November 8th of 2018, two separate wildfires ignited in California, the Camp Fire and the Woolsey Fire. Once again, people began to point out photos and video footage that seemed to suggest beams of energy descending from the sky and striking the Golden State. The situation becomes even stranger when considering footage of a tree burning from the inside, which raises the obvious question of how such a phenomenon could occur. Some might argue that the tree was struck by lightning, but that explanation seems unlikely in the middle of an active wildfire, especially when there is little visible fire surrounding the tree and no sign of rainfall. These wildfires were undeniably unusual. There were images of cars melted into the pavement near untouched vegetation, homes reduced to ash, while neighboring structures remained intact, and many other anomalies. While it is certainly possible that some individuals may have intentionally burned their own homes amid the chaos to collect insurance money, there appears to be enough evidence to suggest that something more than that may have been involved. Perhaps the most compelling evidence pointing toward the use of DEWs comes from satellite data collected at the scenes of these fires. A video released on September 8, 2020 presented information suggesting that DEWs are a significant possibility when attempting to explain the origins of these catastrophic wildfires. If it is true that these fires were ignited using DEWs, then the next questions naturally arise. Who is responsible, and why would they do it? Could it be China or Russia attempting a covert attack on the United States? Or could it be the government itself, seeking to clear land, or to create panic and economic hardship that would foster greater dependence among the population? Many theorists point out that the fires in both California and Australia appear to align with routes where long-proposed high-speed rail systems were planned to be constructed. They suggest that military testing could be taking place in areas where land clearance would conveniently result in large stretches of inexpensive territory for government use. Adding another layer to this discussion is a statement released by the U.S. Department of Defense on September 16th, which seemed to confirm the existence, or at least the research, of DEWs by stating that new technologies are fundamentally reshaping the nature of warfare and that the two Air Force services are leading that transformation. They also noted that China and Russia are attempting to undermine long-standing U.S. dominance in air power through long-range fires, anti-access and aerial denial systems, along with other asymmetric capabilities designed to counter existing strengths. The statement further explained that both China and Russia have placed weapons in space and are known to be developing directed energy weapons to exploit U.S. systems. While the U.S. government has neither confirmed nor denied the existence of its own DEWs, if China and Russia possess such technology, it would seem logical that the United States would not be far behind, or might even be secretly ahead. As Wernher von Braun once warned, whoever controls and militarizes space ultimately controls the world. It may be that space has already been militarized to a far greater extent than most people realize. DEWs, however, represent only part of the story. Alongside the belief that those in power possess immense destructive capabilities in the form of superlasers, there is also the suggestion that they have learned to manipulate other forces of nature. This includes the ability to generate rain, snow, or storms anywhere and at any time, or even to trigger earthquakes. This leads directly into the next element of this theory, which centers on the weather research program known as HAARP. Since the mid-2000s, the HAARP program has gained notoriety for its alleged links to phenomena ranging from chemtrails to hurricanes. As recently as 2010, Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez claimed that HAARP, or a similar program, was responsible for triggering the devastating earthquake in Haiti. To be fair, no source was cited, and the official explanation maintains that the event was caused by the shifting of a previously unmapped fault line along the boundary between the Caribbean and North American tectonic plates. In any case, HAARP stands for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, and it was originally presented as a scientific project focused on weather research. Its purpose was to study the ionosphere, a layer of the upper atmosphere extending from roughly 53 miles above Earth's surface up to about 370 miles high. Funding for the program came from the Air Force, the Navy, the University of Alaska, and DARPA. In May of 2014, the Air Force announced that the HAARP program would be shut down later that same year. However, while experimental work ended in the summer of 2014, the full closure and dismantling of the facility was delayed until at least May of 2015. Today, the site and its equipment are managed by the University of Alaska Fairbanks, which leases access to independent researchers. Officially, most of the research conducted there was weather-related, as one might expect, but the US military also had an interest in the ionosphere because of its role in transmitting radio communications. HAARP works by sending radio waves into the ionosphere and observing how it responds, one of the few reliable methods for studying this otherwise inaccessible region of the atmosphere. The broader objective of the program was to better understand the physics of the ionosphere, which is constantly influenced by activity from the sun. Solar flares can hurl charged particles toward Earth, at times disrupting communication systems and even electrical grids. If scientists could gain deeper insight into how the ionosphere behaves, they might be able to reduce or manage some of these disruptions. Naturally, the idea of scientists experimenting with frequencies and solar interactions has fueled a wide range of alternative theories related to weather control. Mitchell Chossudovsky has argued that evidence indicates HAARP remains fully operational and possesses the ability to trigger floods, hurricanes, droughts, and earthquakes. Although many of the theories surrounding HAARP are speculative, some sources have claimed that during the Obama administration it was used to cause Hurricane Sandy. Over the years of its operation, it has also been alleged to have caused thunderstorms in Iran, Pakistan, Haiti, Turkey, Greece, and the Philippines, as well as major power outages, the crash of TWA Flight 800, Gulf War Syndrome, and chronic fatigue syndrome. On a more positive note, it has also been credited with producing the first artificially generated aurora in 2005. Interestingly, construction of the program cost more than $290 million, with a significant portion of the funding allocated by the late Senator Ted Stevens, who wielded considerable influence over the U.S. defense budget during his time in Congress. When examining the subject more closely, two names that frequently appear are Nick Begich and his son Mark. Nick Begich was an Alaskan politician who mysteriously vanished in a plane crash in 1972. And in the years that followed, his son became deeply focused on uncovering hidden truths. In his self-published book about HAARP, Mark asserted that a Russian military journal warned that bombarding the ionosphere could set off a cascade of electrons capable of flipping Earth's magnetic poles. While this may sound like the plot of a science fiction story, it is well documented that both the Alaska State Legislature and the European Parliament held hearings on HAARP and engaged in debates over its potential environmental impacts. Additionally, the military's responses only heightened the concerns of theorists. When program officials insisted that the facility would never be used for military purposes, Mark later uncovered military documents describing plans for satellite-binding research, along with remarks from then-Secretary of Defense William Cohen, suggesting that electromagnetic waves could be used to influence the climate and remotely trigger earthquakes and volcanic activity. Numerous theories have also proposed that HAARP is responsible for a strange, unexplained hum reported around the world, as well as the phenomenon known as targeted individuals, allegedly involving frequency-based targeting of specific people. Naturally, since the facility has officially been shut down, some allegations claim that such activities and advanced technologies are now being carried out by the so-called deep state, which leads directly into the next phase of this theory. The Philadelphia experiment is widely regarded as one of the most famous advanced technology theories in existence, and the story unfolds like this. It was the summer of 1943, 2 years after the United States entered World War II. A violent naval conflict was underway between American destroyers and the notorious U-boat submarines operated by the Nazis. At the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, a newly commissioned destroyer known as the USS Eldridge was being outfitted with several massive generators as part of a highly classified effort intended to decisively win the Battle of the Atlantic. According to the story, these generators were not installed merely to increase engine power or speed. Based on the theoretical framework of Project Rainbow, they were supposedly built to generate a new type of magnetic field capable of rendering the warship invisible to enemy radar. The theory claimed that, with the full crew aboard, once the generators were activated, witnesses observed a strange green glow enveloping the ship's hull. Then, almost instantly, the Eldridge vanished, becoming undetectable not only to the naked eye but also to radar, completely gone as if it had disappeared into thin air. Alleged classified military reports state that when the ship eventually returned, members of the crew experienced severe burns, confusion, and intense disorientation. Even more disturbing were claims that several sailors were discovered partially fused into the steel structure of the ship itself, still alive, but with arms or legs sealed into the deck or hull. The experiment was said to be based on an element of a unified field theory, one that combined electromagnetism and gravity into a single comprehensive model. According to this explanation, the generators could bend light around an object through refraction, effectively making it completely invisible. Other interpretations, however, are considered even more intriguing, suggesting that the Eldridge may have shifted into a higher dimension, which could explain why crew members were allegedly found merged with the ship upon its return. Despite the horrifying consequences reportedly suffered by the crew, some theorists argue that the experiment was conducted again on October 28, 1943. This time, the Eldridge did more than simply turn invisible. It allegedly vanished from the area, in a flash of blue light, and reappeared in Norfolk, Virginia, over 200 miles away. According to the account, the ship remained visible for a short period to sailors aboard the SS Andrew Furuseth, after which it disappeared once more and reappeared back in Philadelphia, at the exact location it had originally occupied. Even more astonishing is the claim that the ship had somehow traveled 10 minutes backward in time. To determine whether there is any truth behind this alleged conspiracy event, it is necessary to examine the individuals who first brought the story to public attention. In general, nearly everything known about the Philadelphia experiment originates from two main sources. In 1955, ufologist, astronomer, and researcher Morris Jessup had just published a book discussing the possibility of UFO involvement within the government when he received 2 letters from a man named Carlos Miguel Allende. Allende claimed to have personally witnessed the experiment, asserting that the ship was not only rendered invisible, but had actually shifted dimensions. Jessup initially dismissed Allende as unreliable, especially since Allende also claimed to have been personally taught by Albert Einstein. In his letters, Allende described how the US military supposedly used Einstein's discoveries to carry out the experiment. For roughly 13 years following these letters, however, no other crew members from the Eldridge or sailors from nearby ships came forward to support the story. After struggling to verify whether any part of Allende's account was credible, Jessup grew frustrated and was prepared to abandon the investigation entirely. In 1957, he was unexpectedly contacted by 2 officers from the Navy Office of Naval Research, or the ONR. They explained that they had obtained a copy of Jessup's book that had been filled with handwritten annotations describing advanced physics concepts and linking extraterrestrial technology to developments in unified field theory. When Jessup examined the book, he immediately recognized the handwriting as Allende's. Remarkably, the ONR went on to publish over 127 copies of this annotated version. Over time, the story gained significant traction within fringe theory circles and eventually inspired a feature film released in 1984. For many years, Allende maintained that he was the sole witness to the experiment, claiming he had been stationed aboard the SS Andrew Furuseth. After the film's release, however, a man named Al Bilik came forward, stating that he had personally participated in the experiment and that his memories had been erased through brainwashing. He claimed that it was only after watching the movie in 1984 that his suppressed memories resurfaced. Yet the narrative does not stop there, because the alleged activities at Montauk Air Force Base are said to have continued the work begun with the Philadelphia experiment. According to theories proposed by Preston Nichols and Peter Moon, sometime in the late 1950s, secret researchers connected to the original project resumed experiments involving the manipulation of electromagnetic fields for military purposes. At the same time, they reportedly investigated the effects of these fields on human psychology and behavior, possibly delving even deeper into understanding the mysterious dimensional shift that was said to have occurred. A report detailing this research was supposedly compiled and presented to the United States Congress, where it was firmly rejected on the grounds that the work was far too dangerous and inhumane. So rather than following conventional channels, the researchers allegedly reached out directly to the Department of Defense, offering what they claimed was a powerful new weapon capable of driving an enemy insane, triggering symptoms similar to schizophrenia at the push of a button. Without approval from mainstream institutions, the project would need to remain highly classified and funded through black budgets. According to the theory, the Department of Defense agreed, and Project Phoenix came into existence. It is said that equipment was transferred to Camp Hero at the Montauk base sometime in the mid to late 1960s and installed inside an underground bunker beneath the facility, allowing the use of the satellite dish without attracting public attention. Conspiracy theorists claim that to conceal the true purpose of the operation, the site was officially closed in 1969 and donated as a wildlife refuge park. Despite this, the government itself has stated that Camp Hero continued operating well into the 1980s. This is where the theory begins to take a much darker turn, as many individuals have pointed to alleged atrocities that supposedly took place. It is claimed that homeless people were abducted and exposed to massive levels of electromagnetic radiation, with very few surviving the experiments. Others were said to have had their psychic abilities amplified to such an extreme that they could manifest objects out of thin air, but only at the expense of their emotional and mental stability. Mind control experiments were allegedly carried out, with runaway boys reportedly kidnapped and brought to the base, where they endured prolonged periods of severe physical and psychological torture designed to shatter their minds, after which their consciousness was supposedly reprogrammed. In addition to this, research into time travel and dimensional gateways was said to be ongoing and constant. Could these experiments also be the origin of the legendary Montauk Monster, a mysterious creature that reportedly washed ashore near Montauk in 2008? Some believe this entity may have been a higher dimensional being that was pulled into our reality as a result of the experiments. Once the experiments concluded, depending on which version of the theory one believes, the facility was either permanently shut down or completely destroyed, and all personnel involved were allegedly brainwashed, executed, or sworn to absolute secrecy, with all records erased. According to certain theories, however, research at the site continues to this day under far tighter security measures. One of the most popular fictional retellings inspired by the Montauk experiments is the Netflix series Stranger Things, which was originally intended to be titled Montauk. If time travel or interdimensional travel is indeed possible, then it raises the idea that humanity may have existed across multiple realities or timelines. Even a single instance of time manipulation could theoretically cause millions of people to shift into a different timeline within the multiverse, where events are almost identical, yet subtly altered. This idea is often linked to the Mandela effect, a widespread phenomenon in which large groups of people remember certain facts or events differently from how they are officially recorded today. In mainstream psychology, the Mandela effect is typically explained as a form of false memory, but the term itself was coined after Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa, who died in 2013. The confusion arises because countless people around the world, including Fiona Broome, who introduced the term, vividly remember Mandela dying in prison during the 1980 seconds. Another strange example involves Neil Armstrong. Despite his historical significance, many people seemingly have no memory of his death, with numerous fans claiming they either forgot or never noticed the news when he passed away in August of 2012. One of the more rigorously examined cases comes from a 2010 study that focused on people familiar with the clock at the Bologna Centrale railway station, which was damaged during the bombing in August 1980. In that study, 92% of participants incorrectly remembered that the clock had remained stopped since the attack, when in reality, it was repaired not long afterward. Other well-known examples of the Mandela effect include the cartoon title Looney Tunes, being spelled Tunes rather than Toons. Curious George never actually having a tail, Febreze being spelled with only one E, Forrest Gump delivering his famous line in the past tense by saying that life was like a box of chocolates, Pikachu having a black marking on his tail when he does not, and the Berenstein Bears being spelled Berenstain Bears. There are even cases where people believe there were 51 or 52 states in the US, rather than 50. Although that last example may simply reflect shortcomings in the American education system, still, some New Age proponents argue that such large-scale shared false memories point to evidence of dimensional hopping or shifts into parallel realities where things are almost the same, but not quite. The lingering question is, if this is true, then who or what is causing us to move between realities? Is everything we are experiencing merely the result of chance? Or could there be an intentional force shaping a shared reality in which we all play a part? If a secret government truly carried out experiments involving time travel and altered our realities, even in subtle ways, then what else might have been modified in our past, our present, or even our future? If those in power genuinely possess control over reality itself, then nothing would be beyond reach. Time and space could be molded to suit the intentions of anyone with sufficient power or advanced technology. That leads to a deeper question. Who is truly steering the course of the paradigms we live within? Do we have any real influence over what lies ahead for us? Who holds the keys to ultimate authority? The answers to these mysteries may soon come into view. For many decades, an enigma in the skies has fascinated and deeply unsettled people around the globe. Chemtrails, the long white lines left behind by aircraft flying at high altitudes, have ignited intense debate among scientists, independent researchers, and skeptics alike. To some observers, these streaks are believed to be nothing more than harmless condensation trails, known as contrails, created when water vapor and jet exhaust freeze in the cold upper atmosphere. However, critics argue that this explanation does not fully hold up. Contrails are said to dissipate quickly, while chemtrails often remain visible for hours on end, suggesting that something else may be released into the air. Because of this persistence, many have come to view these trails as something far more deliberate and troubling, interpreted as intentional chemical dispersals designed to serve hidden objectives. The modern chemtrail theory began to gain momentum in the late 1990 seconds and early 2000s when people started noticing how long these trails lingered in the sky. They appeared to spread out into hazy veils and sometimes formed patterns that looked like deliberate crisscrosses overhead. This led many to question whether unusual activity was taking place in the upper atmosphere. The situation intensified with the release of a 1996 United States Air Force report titled Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. This document explored possible future military applications of weather modification technologies, including their use to enhance or disrupt military operations, further fueling public concern. At the same time, increased attention was directed toward the HAARP research facility in Alaska, a high-frequency ionospheric research program. Some suspected it was involved in secret experiments related to weather control, electromagnetic manipulation, and even mind control. In 1999, late-night radio host Art Bell began openly discussing chemtrail theories on his popular radio show, bringing the subject to a much wider audience. That same year, Clifford Carnicom, a scientist and one of the earliest investigators into the phenomenon, carried out a series of atmospheric tests. His research reportedly detected unusually high concentrations of strange particles in the air, including metallic elements, odd fibers, and crystalline materials. These results suggested that something artificial might be entering the atmosphere. These findings helped form the groundwork of what would become known as the chemtrail theory, giving rise to the term chemtrails itself. Carnicom later released a documentary titled Air Assault Crimes in 2005, which presented evidence of atmospheric manipulation and motivated a new generation of researchers to continue exploring the subject. Over time, investigators of chemtrails have proposed a wide range of possible motives behind these activities, many of which are deeply unsettling. One of the most frequently suggested explanations involves weather modification. Geoengineering methods such as cloud seeding, which uses substances like silver iodide to encourage rainfall, are well documented and already in use. Chemtrail theorists argue that such practices may have expanded far beyond their original scope, with military forces or private groups attempting to influence global weather systems. These efforts could involve reducing the impacts of climate change, intentionally creating droughts or storms, or even weaponizing weather as part of covert warfare strategies. HAARP is often linked to these ideas, with some claiming it amplifies the atmospheric effects of chemtrails, enabling precise manipulation of weather patterns or disrupting the agriculture and infrastructure of rival nations. Other theories suggest that chemtrails serve purposes related to psychological or biological control. Some believe that substances released through these trails are intended to dull human awareness, making people more passive, obedient, and disconnected from their spiritual capabilities. Others associate chemtrails with various health problems, including respiratory conditions, autoimmune disorders, and even Morgellons syndrome, a rare and highly controversial skin condition. Although mainstream science has not confirmed these claims, the ongoing presence and persistence of such theories continue to raise concerns about the long-term effects of airborne particles on human health and well-being. Moreover, the reported presence of metallic particles in the atmosphere, including substances like aluminum and barium referenced in independent research, has prompted some to theorize that these materials might interact with electromagnetic fields in ways that influence human behavior or even selectively affect certain populations. Some theorists suggest that these particles are intentionally dispersed in order to carry out experiments on large groups of people without their knowledge or consent. More complex interpretations propose that chemtrails are engineered to serve several objectives at the same time. Among these proposed aims are controlling food supplies by changing soil composition to benefit genetically modified crops, influencing global populations by lowering fertility rates, and even conditioning the atmosphere for the deployment of advanced holographic or electromagnetic technologies. Images of unmarked military aircraft leaving behind these trails have further intensified suspicion, leading many to question why the substances being released are not subjected to broader independent analysis. Despite the widespread public discussion surrounding these ideas, mainstream scientific institutions and government agencies have consistently rejected the existence of chemtrails. In response to increasing public concern, the Environmental Protection Agency, the NSA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the NOAA released a joint fact sheet describing contrails as a normal result of jet engine exhaust interacting with cold, humid air. To many observers, however, this rapid and unified response was interpreted not as a clarification, but rather as potential proof of a cover-up. This sense of mistrust has only grown stronger in the internet era, where searches related to chemtrails return millions of results, most of which are articles aimed at debunking the theory. Critics argue that this pattern points to cooperation between technology companies and governments to conceal the truth, while tech companies maintain that their efforts are simply intended to counter misinformation. Yet the narrative does not stop there. Instead, it appears to tie into an even broader and more unsettling theory, known as Project Bluebeam. First introduced in the 1990 seconds by Canadian journalist Sergei Monast, Project Bluebeam outlines an alleged secret plan involving the use of advanced technology to engineer a worldwide crisis, ultimately intended to establish a new world order. According to Monast, the project unfolds in 4 distinct stages, each increasingly complex. The initial stage focuses on weakening established religious beliefs through the fabrication of archaeological discoveries that challenge traditional teachings. Supposed ancient artifacts or texts would be unveiled to suggest that widely accepted religious histories are inaccurate, destabilizing faith systems and paving the way for the next phase, the creation of a single global religion. The second stage centers on the use of holographic technology to project images of religious figures or deities into the skies above various parts of the world. These projections would deliver messages to believers, appearing to fulfill prophecies or represent divine interventions. Christians might witness Jesus, Muslims might see Muhammad, and Hindus might see Krishna. Yet, over time, these figures would merge into one universal entity, claiming to unite all religions under a single new belief system. The third stage involves the application of electromagnetic wave technology to mimic telepathic communication. Monast asserted that systems capable of transmitting sound directly into the human mind, often referred to as voice-to-skull technology, would be used to implant thoughts or commands, creating the impression of direct, divine guidance. The fourth and final stage is described as the most extreme, involving the orchestration of a massive global false flag event. This event could manifest as a simulated extraterrestrial invasion, a staged apocalypse, or a dramatic act of divine judgment. The intention is to generate such overwhelming fear and confusion that humanity voluntarily accepts a one-world government as the sole means of survival. Some theorists argue that chemtrails are essential to this phase, either by conditioning the atmosphere for large-scale holographic displays or by dispersing substances that influence human perception, making the deception more believable. This overarching theory is often linked to Wernher von Braun, a key figure in the development of rocket technology and space exploration, and is commonly associated with claims of a staged alien invasion. This association largely comes from accounts by Dr. Carol Rosen, who worked alongside von Braun during the 1970 seconds. Furthermore, reports describing the presence of metallic particles in the atmosphere, including elements such as aluminum and barium mentioned in various independent studies, have led some individuals to speculate that these substances could interact with electromagnetic fields in ways that shape human behavior or even target specific groups within the population. Certain theorists claim that these materials are deliberately released in order to conduct large-scale experiments on people without their awareness or consent. More elaborate interpretations argue that chemtrails are designed to fulfill multiple purposes simultaneously. Among the goals often proposed are manipulating food production by altering soil chemistry to favor genetically modified crops, influencing global demographics by reducing fertility rates, and even preparing the atmosphere for the use of advanced holographic or electromagnetic technologies. Photographs and videos showing unmarked military aircraft leaving behind persistent trails have only fueled suspicion further, prompting many to ask why the substances involved are not subjected to more extensive and independent testing. Despite the widespread attention and debate surrounding these claims, established scientific organizations and government bodies have consistently denied that chemtrails exist. In response to growing public concern, the Environmental Protection Agency, the NSA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the NOAA issued a joint fact sheet explaining that contrails are a normal byproduct of jet engine exhaust interacting with cold, moist air at high altitudes. To many observers, however, this swift and coordinated response was viewed not as a simple explanation, but as possible evidence of a deliberate cover-up. This atmosphere of distrust has intensified in the age of the Internet, where searches related to chemtrails yield millions of results, the majority of which focus on dismissing or debunking the theory. Critics contend that this trend suggests collaboration between governments and technology companies to hide the truth, while tech companies insist their actions are aimed solely at limiting the spread of misinformation. Still, the storyline does not end with chemtrails alone. Instead, it appears to connect to a much larger and more disturbing hypothesis known as Project Bluebeam, first introduced in the 1990 seconds by Canadian journalist Sergei Monast. Project Bluebeam describes an alleged covert plan involving sophisticated technology used to manufacture a global crisis, ultimately intended to bring about a new world order. According to Monast, the project unfolds through 4 clearly defined stages, each more complex than the last. The first stage is said to focus on undermining established religious beliefs by presenting fabricated archaeological discoveries that challenge traditional doctrines. Supposedly ancient artifacts or newly revealed texts would be introduced to imply that widely accepted religious histories are flawed, destabilizing existing belief systems and preparing humanity for the next phase, the creation of a single global religion. The second stage revolves around the use of advanced holographic technology to project images of religious figures or deities into the skies over different regions of the world. These visual manifestations would communicate messages to believers, appearing to fulfill prophecies or signify divine intervention. Christians might witness Jesus, Muslims might see Muhammad, and Hindus might see Krishna, yet, over time, these appearances would gradually merge into a single universal figure, claiming to unite all religions under one new belief system. The third stage involves the use of electromagnetic wave technology to simulate telepathic communication. Monast claimed that systems capable of transmitting sound directly into the human mind, often described as voice-to-skull technology, would be employed to insert thoughts or commands, giving individuals the impression that they are receiving direct guidance from a higher power. The fourth and final stage is portrayed as the most extreme of all, involving the orchestration of a massive global false flag event. This event might take the form of a simulated alien invasion, a staged apocalypse, or an apparent act of divine judgment. The goal would be to create such intense fear and confusion that humanity willingly accepts a one-world government as the only path to survival. Some theorists maintain that chemtrails play a critical role in this phase, either by conditioning the atmosphere to support large-scale holographic projections or by dispersing substances that alter human perception, making the deception more convincing. This broader theory is frequently associated with Wernher von Braun, a central figure in the development of rocket technology and space exploration, and is often linked to claims involving a staged extraterrestrial invasion. Much of this connection comes from accounts attributed to Dr. Carol Rosen, who reportedly worked alongside von Braun during the 1970 seconds. Today, there is an even deeper mental and emotional division as we retreat into isolated bubbles of perception shaped by our search histories and by algorithms that decide what we see, guiding each of us along our own paths of least resistance rather than drawing us toward one another and toward unity. You might describe these as paradigms of belief or existence, frameworks in which people live either as minorities or majorities, where personal and collective belief systems influence the choices people make and naturally produce outcomes that follow from those beliefs. For instance, Christians who believe that Jesus will return soon tend to live according to that expectation, and that belief directly influences their actions. In contrast, those who believe the earth is flat will behave and communicate very differently than if they believed the world is round, often with each side aggressively attacking the other end of the spectrum. Yet do these distinctions truly matter when so many of us spend our days immersed in suffering, frequently projecting it onto one another in quiet, subconscious ways? If the ultimate aim is unity, free from this mindset of duality, how do we actually reach it, especially when conspiracy theories about the Great Reset and the creation of a one-world government are so widespread? Is it really possible to unite everyone through truth, love, and authenticity, or is at least a portion of humanity destined to remain mentally enslaved forever? As we have examined in detail so far, it appears that mental and emotional manipulation is a factor we must remain aware of. Yet there are many people who are completely asleep to this idea. They struggle through everyday life, but because of their existing connections and routines, they fail to search for anything beyond what is immediately in front of them. When doctors tell them that medication is the best and only solution for their symptoms, they accept it without asking questions, and that becomes the end of the discussion. When the media instructs them to fear the pandemic, they comply, and fear takes control. With this paradigm firmly in place, and so many people deeply rooted in it, do we truly have any chance of freeing ourselves collectively? More importantly, are we actually prepared for such a transformation? In 2020, humanity as a whole learned a powerful lesson about the nature of quarantine, about separating and isolating ourselves from one another for extended periods of time. But the lessons of quarantine extend far beyond our physical circumstances. We also witnessed and came to understand the layers of quarantine within ourselves, the divisions between our egos and our souls, and we explored how much willingness we have to ask questions and go deeper rather than simply accepting things at face value. This is precisely why we are discussing paradigms, because there are many of them. There are people who ask questions and people who do not. There are those who listen to multiple sources of information, who continue learning and growing, and there are others who prefer to talk, but ultimately take no meaningful action in their lives. We can compare this to the biblical parable of the sower and the seed, which speaks of those who hear the divine word of God and those who do not. And even among those who hear it, it may sound inspiring at first, but unless that wisdom is carefully nurtured, the seed withers and dies, and they quickly return to their suffering and to a life devoid of spirit. From this, we can see that paradigms extend beyond mere belief systems. They move into, and arise from, the realm of action. The invisible world and the visible world are profoundly connected. Earlier, we explored what might occur if humanity were to inherit advanced, almost alien technology, and what would happen if we suddenly possessed limitless power and the freedom to travel the universe. While it is easy to rebel against institutions like NASA, whether or not they are withholding the truth at the highest levels, none of it truly matters if we are unwilling to examine our own behavior and ask whether we have earned such a gift. Historically, human history is filled with colonization, subjugation, domination, and the enslavement of others, including humans, animals, and nature itself. There is no doubt that today, unjust prejudices such as racism and sexism still exist within societal structures. And another form of prejudice that is often overlooked but equally significant is speciesism. You may find it eye-opening to watch a speciesism documentary created by a young man who initially set out to prove that animal farming was not really that harmful, only to discover that while we believe the Holocaust ended over 70 years ago, the reality is that a Holocaust is still taking place today, visible in the concentration camps in which we confine animals. Chickens, cows, pigs, and even fish are all subjugated against their will, dominated, terrorized, and killed in massive numbers to sustain our increasingly consumption-focused population. There comes a tipping point, and when you emerge on the other side of it intellectually, the realization can be utterly crippling. You are immediately faced with a kind of Holocaust that is happening constantly, everywhere, at all times. Everyone you know is involved in it. Your loved ones, the people you admire, and even those you dislike, all around the world, are participating in it in one way or another. When this subject is raised, it is often treated as something laughable. Friends and family may find it amusing, even endearing, that you have suddenly taken an interest in the issue of animals. And yet, how do you not look back on your own life up to that moment, once you have awakened to it, and see it as something deeply troubling and, in hindsight, inexcusable? Of course, the moment this conversation begins, you can watch how certain people, holding particular belief systems, immediately push back against it. It is often assumed right away that this message must be some kind of political statement or a pretentious promotion of veganism. And while many people do arrive at veganism for these reasons, ask any Native American from just a few hundred years ago who traveled across the plains in groups hunting buffalo, and you will discover that there were natural ways of hunting that fostered both human freedom and profound respect for nature. Within the worldview of those native cultures, they were part of the spirit of the land just as much as the animals themselves were. They coexisted with nature, and because of this, Their belief systems guided their actions toward ways of living that were natural, sacred, and pure. Even with the limited technology available to them at the time, they understood their impact on the surrounding world with a clarity that many people today, in this much later era, seem to lack. At the time this video was created, modern animal agriculture is responsible for an enormous amount of disease and suffering. The core belief driving this industry is that humans are entitled to dominate other species simply because we are larger, more intelligent, and more capable. These assumptions are so deeply embedded in the collective unconscious that changing them on a large scale may require something truly transformative to dismantle the existing paradigm. Even if we look at this from a more biblical perspective and note that in Genesis, God granted humans dominion over the earth and its creatures, are we not still obligated to govern this world with grace, respect, and honor? We are meant to be caretakers of the earth, not its captors. Times, however, have shifted dramatically. The technology of just a few hundred years ago has been rapidly replaced by tools that are vastly more powerful. And what would happen if tomorrow humanity suddenly gained the kind of power we have been discussing? Limitless energy and the freedom to travel the universe at will. With our current paradigm of collective consciousness, the outcome might look very much like what we see in any Iron Man movie, Avengers story, or superhero film. What happens when the villain gains control of the arc reactor or the Infinity Stones? It closely mirrors what misguided humans have done to one another and to animals for thousands of years. They take what they want and give little thought to the consequences. And what, realistically, would prevent humanity from doing the same thing today? If our deeply rooted speciesism remains unexamined, what happens when humanity encounters an alien species we have never seen before? Unless they are vastly more advanced and capable of destroying us with the flick of a wrist, yet choose not to, which would be profoundly humbling, what would stop us from imposing our will upon them? In many ways, this question reflects the reality of our world right now. The speed at which technology has advanced and reshaped our lives may have surpassed our ability to develop the wisdom necessary to wield such power responsibly. The mental health of teenage girls is at an all-time low due to the glamorization and addictive nature of social media. Any corporation hungry for resources and capable of doing so monitors and invades our privacy. We now possess the power to heat the planet, destroy rainforests, and reshape landscapes, perhaps faster than we can truly understand the consequences of these actions. Materially, we may appear advanced, but spiritually, we still have a great deal of catching up to do. Reflecting this emerging shift in understanding, within certain branches of geology, archaeology, and the natural sciences, the idea of a new geological epoch has been proposed. As referenced in ancient accounts such as the Sumerian epic, the Pleistocene was followed by the Holocene, which began around 11,650 years ago before today and is the period we currently inhabit. However, a growing number of scholars argue that humanity's impact on the environment and our capacity to alter the planet's ecosystems suggests that we have entered a new epoch altogether. This discussion is known as the Anthropocene debate. It proposes that human influence on the natural world has become so significant that it deserves a redefinition of our place in geological time. As of July of 2020, the International Union of Geological Sciences has not officially approved the term, but several possible starting points have been suggested, ranging from the dawn of the agricultural revolution to 1945, when the environmental fallout from the first atomic bomb altered the planet on a massive scale. Even Dr. Stephen Greer has explained that many extraterrestrial species are not concerned with violence itself, but are instead deeply worried about humanity's attachment to violence as a species. It is not difficult to imagine a future in which humanity spreads across the galaxy, much like in Star Wars, dominating and controlling populations, commerce, resources, and entire worlds in the pursuit of profit. In that vision, Emperor Palpatine embodies the darkest, most corrupt, and most selfish aspects that exist within us, while Luke and the Jedi serve as reflections of our hopes, our inner purity, and the dreams we carry in our hearts. But is this truly the future we wish to bring into existence? one where we expand through the galaxy while subjugating those who are less advanced along their evolutionary journey. Perhaps the ultimate conspiracy, within this great conspiracy of everything, lies in that very question. Is it possible that the subjugation we witness today, along with theories of human mental and emotional enslavement, as disturbing and horrifying as they may be, represent a necessary evil meant to collectively teach humanity who we truly are, and to prevent us from leaving this world until we are capable of doing so responsibly? It is a strange idea, one that turns conspiracies upside down. In this view, the Illuminati, whoever they may be, could exist at a level even higher than the elite groups associated with pedophile rings, which are still part of the Matrix, of course, simply observing humanity as it confronts its own darkness, ensuring that we do not gain access to power we are not yet prepared to wield. After all, the word Illuminati essentially translates to enlightened ones. And yet, even this remains just another belief paradigm. In the game of life, you choose the paradigm you live by. We are not claiming that this interpretation is true in any definitive sense, but it is something worth holding in awareness, because existence is filled with paradoxes, and we must be free to explore each of them wherever they may lead. Here, at last, we arrive at the core of our conspiracy theory of everything. It suggests that alongside technological advancement, which provides material wealth, we must also cultivate spiritual technology within our own bodies, allowing us to navigate an ever-changing physical world. Only through this balance can we truly progress to the next stage of evolution. The word itself originates from the idea of disclosure of information to humanity by a divine or supernatural source, as well as an unveiling or uncovering. As we have already observed, humanity is experiencing an exponential lifting of veils, with life being stirred and transformed in unprecedented ways. One way to describe this is to imagine humanity having lived in darkness for a very long time, separated by socio-economic and cultural divisions. With modern technology, it appears as though the lights are finally being switched on for everyone at once. Yet now there is so much light, arriving all at the same time, that it becomes blinding. Despite having access to more information than ever before, we remain just as blind as we always were, at least until our eyes have time to adjust. The essence of revelation is not only about external veils being lifted, but also about our own awakening to a divine origin. As new information emerges, belief systems and ideologies are challenged on a massive scale, forcing us to re-examine our concepts of identity. In this process, those who are open to exploring new ideas continue to grow, while those who resist anything unfamiliar retreat even deeper into their existing paradigms. Even within the new world we are shaping, multiple paradigms will continue to coexist. We must remember that some individuals are consumed by hatred, negativity, and suffering, all of which stem from their own unresolved pain. This pain restricts their higher consciousness and anchors them to a lower vibrational state. This does not mean they are inherently bad people, because the only true solution is compassion. No matter how disconnected someone may feel from their soul, there is always a path back to the light. However, this can only happen if they truly desire it, because unless a person seeks their own salvation, they will never find it. For this reason, it makes little difference whether someone spends years immersed in a VR reality, abuses their body, or even, in some future scenario, travels across the universe. All paths through life are available to us, but only one path leads to the liberation of the soul, and that path lies within. Let this serve as a lesson for all of us. If we fear the darkness within ourselves or within others, and attempt to suppress it through anger and hatred, we lower our own vibration and reduce ourselves to the same level of consciousness as that which we oppose. Evil only gives rise to more evil. And, in the words of a wise Jedi Master, fear leads to anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. Therefore, the real answer to humanity's salvation, or to the reconnection of our souls as we spoke about long ago, lies in sincere and authentic compassion. By raising our own level of consciousness to a point where our inner light naturally shines outward to those around us, we become channels of sacred and transformative change through the goodness we choose to live by. While this may sound to some like spiritual speculation, the discoveries emerging today have the potential to fundamentally alter everything we believe we know about both science and religion. These findings point toward a deeper, more basic, and more inherent understanding of who we are, our role within the cosmos, and the abilities we possess and may one day reclaim or inherit. When addressing the very nature of consciousness itself, these discoveries are so profoundly paradigm-shifting that life on Earth, as we currently understand it, would never be the same once this knowledge became widespread among humanity, assuming it is ever allowed to reach that point. For much of history, our understanding of spirituality has been shaped by the world's religions, while our view of the universe and of life itself has been directed by science. Films such as Zeitgeist describe and expose the many ways religious institutions have exerted control over people, while more recent works, like Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's The Science Delusion, illustrate how science has also been used to guide people into a narrow mindset, keeping us confined within a strictly physical paradigm and nothing beyond it. Moreover, these two voices, science and religion, have been in conflict for a very long time, frequently criticizing one another or outright refusing to acknowledge the other's perspective, along with the insight and wisdom each has to offer. Even so, new revelations about consciousness now stand ready to dissolve the illusion of separation, dismantle the dogmas we have clung to for generations, and provide us with a foundational framework for building an entirely new world. In truth, this is how we can create heaven on earth. All that is required is our full and willing participation. One clear illustration of this can be found in the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton and the Biology of Belief, which explains through compelling scientific reasoning that our beliefs and sense of self are shaped by our environment, and that what we consistently think about ourselves is what we ultimately become. His research shows that if we live our lives believing, for example, that a disease runs in our family and that we will inevitably develop it as well, we are consciously and subconsciously programming our bodies with signals that encourage that very outcome. Naturally, these beliefs, along with many others, often originate from our parents, our families, and the environments we immerse ourselves in. When we examine all of our childhood conditioning together, we see a complex blend of media influences, entertainment, news narratives, inherited ideas, and messages received from friends and the people around us. Who we are today has been shaped by the world we grew up in. And while many of the lessons we learned were positive and meaningful, many others were simply long-standing beliefs passed down through generations that may not truly serve our highest good. These beliefs form our worldview, which in turn influences how we behave and act, ultimately shaping the destinies we create for ourselves. It appears that many of the belief systems we continue to hold actually limit and disempower us, preventing us from fully living our lives. In addition, many of today's largest industries are built upon older paradigms, and their continued expansion often depends on restricting the spread of this new understanding. A clear example of this can be seen in the pharmaceutical industry. If someone were truly helped to overcome their depression, it would be extremely difficult to justify charging them thousands of dollars each year for ongoing prescriptions. It is far easier, and far more profitable, for their depression or illness to remain a long-term condition. We must recognize that our environment has played an enormous role in shaping our shared reality, beginning from the moment of conception and continuing through every experience we have had since birth. While birth defects do exist, Bruce's research indicates that 95% of people have perfectly healthy DNA and are capable of changing how their genes express themselves if they choose to do so. For some individuals, this process may be easier than for others, but it is empowering research all the same. If we are able to change the signals our bodies receive, the thoughts and emotions we communicate to ourselves and absorb from others, along with the places we live, the music we listen to, the food we consume, and the entertainment we engage with. All of these factors will contribute to reshaping our lives. They influence us from the most surface levels down to the deepest layers of our being, gradually guiding the direction of who we become. As Bruce's work indicates, it truly does not matter what condition you are facing. When you are able to address the underlying cause and offer yourself a stimulus that resonates at a higher vibration, there is essentially nothing beyond healing, adding even more depth to the dialogue where science and spirituality begin to converge. When we look back through history and examine the traditions of the ancient world, we discover that the foundations of spirituality are deeply rooted in mysticism. Across many civilizations, including the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Indians, Native American shamans, and various Aboriginal tribes, there exists a vast reservoir of wisdom, focused on mystical experiences and altered states of consciousness, along with the use of psychedelic plant medicines. In the modern era, and thanks to a number of remarkable scientific pioneers such as Dr. Rick Strassman, as well as the more controversial experiments we have already explored involving psychedelics, these substances are now understood to be powerful tools with a wide range of applications. Stories surrounding the Montauk experiment claim that individuals within the laboratories experienced amplified psychic abilities to the extent that they could manifest objects seemingly out of thin air, though this reportedly came at the expense of their emotional and psychological stability. This further points toward theories proposed by psychedelic researchers who suggest that there may be additional dimensions or realms of existence existing all around us, and that psychedelics allow us not only to perceive these realms, but to interact with them, thereby enhancing our own psychic capacities. Here we encounter a profound surge of insight flowing through both science and religion, because it is not unusual for people to report encounters with various beings during such journeys. These experiences may include meetings with ascended masters such as Thoth, Jesus, or Buddha, encounters with mythical beings like elves or dragons, or even contact with aliens of many different forms. It almost appears to imply that while material science has concentrated on understanding the mechanisms of the third dimension, world religions have placed greater emphasis on engaging with higher realms and the beings said to inhabit them. Psychedelics, then, while not the sole means of communication or interaction with higher dimensions, seem to function as a powerful bridge, linking our consciousness to higher worlds and closing the gap between the material and the immaterial. This represents only one of several roles that psychedelics may play. Just as they can expand our sensory awareness outward into other planes of existence, they also broaden our awareness inward, illuminating and visualizing the subconscious and unconscious layers of ourselves. This inner expansion can be used to shift and reorganize our internal framework of being. As the Institute of Noetic Sciences is demonstrating today, along with the ideas presented by Dr. Bruce Lipton, our consciousness and our intentions guide our reality, direct our focus, and therefore shape our actions. In the context of sacred ceremonies, approaching the experience as holy and reverent will lead to outcomes entirely different from treating it as a recreational or party drug. And while profound healing is possible through plant medicine, that does not guarantee it will occur, because ultimately the responsibility rests with you. Today, an extraordinary number of testimonials have emerged from individuals who have taken part in plant medicine ceremonies, particularly when guided by a genuine shaman. These ceremonies create a sacred environment for releasing darkness, uncovering deep truths, discovering healing and forgiveness, and experiencing the unification of the soul. And it is not limited to ayahuasca alone, because psilocybin mushrooms are also demonstrating remarkable success rates in clinical trials, helping people overcome depression, anxiety, and addictions to smoking, drinking, and other substances, often outperforming conventional treatment methods for the same conditions. This is something that deserves serious attention, yet it must also be approached with care. Just as there are authentic shamans and truly compassionate healing centers, there are also plant medicine charlatans who may exploit the vulnerability created by psychedelic states for harmful or self-serving reasons. This risk arises when the intention of the space or the shamans is not aligned with the soul, or when authenticity and integrity are lacking. For this reason, at Spirit Science we personally recommend only healing centers that we have directly experienced and verified for their quality. And we strongly suggest watching our YouTube film, Are Miracles Real?, The Secret Mysteries of Ayahuasca. If you have not already seen it, setting, and substance are all crucial elements in plant medicine healing, and choosing a local option in a city with untrained shamans, or simply selecting the cheapest alternative available, can often cause more harm than benefit. A person who could genuinely gain something from a ceremony may still suffer a psychotic breakdown if they are exposed to too much, placed in the wrong setting, or guided by shamans who lack the ability to responsibly handle the depth of psychic energy released during such a ceremony. In this sense, this may be one of the dimensions of psychedelics that we, as a species, will inevitably need to confront. Their meaningful re-entry into human life, much like the practices of ancient mystics long ago, arrives alongside the unveiling of a deeper psychic bond between one another. This idea alone has the potential to generate immense disorder, as we begin to realize that our thoughts and emotions are not confined within us, but extend outward into a shared field, connecting us with others in a deeply intimate way. While this realization will ultimately draw us closer together, fear of it will also compel many to aggressively resist it and deny that it exists at all. An old and esoteric insight that lends further weight to this understanding is the recognition that change is the only true constant in the universe. Yet our societies and collective egos are often structured around the illusion of long-term stability and permanence. Whenever possible, we tend to avoid change, clinging to familiar structures far longer than is healthy, which naturally leads to increased suffering over time. For those who choose to embrace mystical states of awareness, who investigate the nature of higher realms through plant medicine, meditation, lucid dreaming, or other spiritual disciplines, an entirely new paradigm begins to take shape. Within this framework, genuine transcendence becomes attainable, and the transformations unfolding over the coming decades become far easier to navigate than they otherwise might be. This path must remain a deeply personal decision for each individual, because many will choose to defend the old paradigm at all costs. For those who resist, the shift into the new may prove even more turbulent and uncomfortable. Just as scientific worldviews undergo dramatic revisions that reveal an increasingly interconnected model of reality, the religions of the world will likewise be compelled to evolve. If large numbers of people begin encountering ascended master avatars together within these higher realms, religious division will inevitably dissolve as long-standing dogmas collapse and give way to a far more universal truth, a genuine unity consciousness. In such a reality, the demiurgic mode of existence can no longer endure within our minds and bodies. We come to understand that we are truly made in the image of the Creator, meaning that the spiritual essence, whether one chooses to call it God, Source, Spirit, or even Sophia, is fundamentally creative in nature, and that same creative force flows through us as well. We are creators in our own right. Everything that has been brought into existence within our world is the result of our thoughts, emotions, and collective effort. And just as humanity has produced widespread disconnection, we also possess the capacity to generate connection, unity, and love. Even so, this is not the final stage in the birth of a new paradigm. If we consciously choose to embrace this belief, we may open ourselves to the experience of ascension itself. When we look back into ancient history, we encounter stories that suggest something far greater awaits us, the release from earthly constraints that bind us to this plane of existence. The idea of ascension is most commonly associated with the accounts of Jesus, who rose to heaven after his resurrection, ascending to a higher realm. Yet this theme also appears throughout Greek, Indian, and Egyptian mythology, which recount tales of beings who transformed into gods through their pursuit of wisdom. The stories of the Greek figure Hermes Trismegistus are particularly significant, as are the teachings recorded in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. According to these traditions, Hermes was a man who mastered the three branches of wisdom that together comprise the whole of the universe, and through this mastery, he transformed himself into a god. These three branches are as follows: the unification of matter and energy as they shift from one state into another; astrology, which is the comprehension of cosmic cycles and the way time and space curve and flow between different states around us; and theurgy, the knowledge of spiritual practice, including sacred rituals and the invocation of divine forces within and around us to create lasting change in both this world and the next. In the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, a figure often regarded as the same being as Hermes, we are told of ancient Atlantis, long before the decline of consciousness, where a man named Chikatet Aralek Vomalites devoted his entire life to the pursuit of cosmic wisdom. By placing all other earthly pleasures aside, he gained access to sacred spaces hidden from the masses, deep beneath the earth. Through this devotion, he became a god, a master of time and space, free to move physically between dimensions and across time itself. Within these writings, Thoth, echoing the words attributed to Jesus, teaches that we too can walk these same paths and may also reach these states of consciousness should we truly choose to do so. From stories like these, we are compelled to ask ourselves whether it might truly be possible to gain such profound mastery over our bodies, our minds, and our consciousness that we could free ourselves not only from the limitations of the human condition, but even from the constraints of time, space, and gravity themselves. What if, through the power of consciousness, we were capable of performing acts and miracles that matched those attributed to the ascended masters of history? Accounts of Jesus describe him walking on water, healing the ill, raising the dead, and after returning from death himself, lifting his body into the air and vanishing into heaven. How could such events be explained scientifically using our modern understanding of consciousness? Perhaps with a sufficiently strong level of conscious awareness within the body, combined with a powerful energetic field or light body, we might begin to understand how to influence and direct the forces of nature. In contemporary science, these are identified as the strong force, the weak force, the electromagnetic force, and gravity. The strong force holds the atomic nucleus together, the weak force governs radioactive decay, the electromagnetic force binds molecules, and gravity holds together large-scale matter. Of these four, gravity remains the least understood, as it appears to have almost negligible influence on molecules or atoms because of their small mass. As a curvature of spacetime, gravity differs from the other forces, seeming instead to function as one of the fundamental guiding principles of reality itself. In a sense, gravity is something of an illusion, since prevailing theories suggest that matter tells spacetime how to curve, and spacetime tells matter how to move. Yet, Nikola Tesla strongly disagreed with the idea that space is curved, proposing alternative theories of gravity that are still debated today, largely because gravity remains so poorly understood. The degree of mastery required to overcome these forces would be extraordinary. To move one's physical body into another dimension, or even through the dimension of time, would demand an immense level of conscious presence flowing through every atom of the body, along with a deep understanding of how these forces act upon the body in order to shift form from one state to another without losing limbs, organs, or becoming lost in time altogether. On one hand, such feats might be achievable with sufficient technological knowledge, yet, on the other hand, true transcendent liberation may come only through the use of the biological technology we already possess. Through spiritual dedication, it is possible that the first force we would learn to influence is gravity, granting us the ability to levitate and move freely through three-dimensional space by understanding and bending it around us. With greater mastery, we might gain control over the electromagnetic force and therefore over our molecules. This could allow us to alter how our bodies appear and perhaps even sustain bodily renewal far beyond what we currently believe possible. This could be the hidden key to physical immortality. Beyond that, learning to consciously interact with our atoms could enable us to transform our bodies, and potentially other objects, at will. Is this what Thoth meant when he claimed freedom to move through time and space? Or could this explain the legends of the ancient Lemurians and their supposed ability to change their bodies at will? As we come to master the forces of nature, especially at a subatomic level, we may also gain the capacity to become quantumly entangled across time and space. This could allow us to physically travel through time or enter other dimensions of reality. We could journey throughout the universe, discovering new worlds and connecting with other forms of life. As discussed before, Many accounts of deep DMT experiences describe arrival in intricate geometric cities and encounters with beings of light. While psychedelics may offer temporary glimpses of such realms, a sufficiently high level of mastery over the forces of nature might make it possible to reach them physically. What is particularly intriguing about this entire idea, however, is that it appears to rest entirely on our belief systems as to whether it can become real. This is already evident in nearly all of our technological progress, and the speed at which we advance is equally dependent on us. Consider this. If no one had ever shown interest in building a car, or if society collectively believed that an automobile was impossible, we would still be traveling by horse today. There was also a time when most people believed it was impossible to set foot on the moon, until stories like those written by Jules Verne inspired enough minds, turning a former impossibility into a shared dream and eventually into a real and determined ambition. Yet, if those books had never been written, and if those dreams had never been believed in or even entertained, we almost certainly would not have rockets routinely traveling up and down through Earth's atmosphere today. In that sense, this process of ascension could unfold instantly, or it might require thousands of years before we reach such a level of mastery. Ultimately, it depends on us and on our willingness and desire to reach toward this kind of higher reality. For many people, this future feels unattainable without substantial assistance. Because nearly all of us are lost to some extent within the demiurge, doing our best to navigate the circumstances that life has placed upon us. The amount of healing work and spiritual discipline required along this path is immense. Furthermore, not every soul is willing to accept this information, because it represents an entirely new belief framework that directly conflicts with what they already hold to be true, and so it becomes far easier and far safer to avoid considering anything unfamiliar. And that is the ultimate caveat here. As we have explored before, if you choose to adopt a belief system that does not align with the majority of the world, whether that belief is that the earth is flat or even hollow, your belief system will shape your actions, and those actions will, in turn, determine the quality of your life. This leads us to an important question. If someone believed in something that was completely untrue, yet that belief allowed them to live a happier life, would we argue that such a belief, even if false, was still a good one to hold? Put more simply, is it better to be right, or to be happy and fulfilled? In the end, this is something each of us must decide for ourselves. While many people view conspiracy theories with fear, concerned about the influence and control they believe are imposed upon them, does this not also suggest that their own beliefs may be limiting what they are capable of doing based on the very control systems they assume exist? However, if at the highest level, the creative force behind all things in the universe is truly benevolent, as nearly every spiritual tradition since the dawn of humanity has suggested, then it would follow that the deep state and all perceived negative powers are also part of the divine order. They may even be necessary for reasons we do not yet fully understand, perhaps as tools for learning who we are on this great journey of human discovery. These conspiracy theories, while undeniably dark and often disturbing, could themselves be a fundamental requirement for ascension to occur at some point in the future. For some individuals, the ascension paradigm feels undeniably true and deeply resonant, while for others it is met with doubt, skepticism, fear, and even loathing. And indeed, it is up to each of us to discover our own truth and to embrace everything life offers with open hearts and open minds. What if you fully embrace the ascension path, yet at the end of your life you still cannot fly? Does that mean you were wrong? Or does it simply suggest that there is still more work to be done on your soul's journey before you can reach that state? We can also reflect on the story of the legendary 4-minute mile. For as long as history could remember, humanity believed it was impossible to run a mile in only 4 minutes, until 1954, when Roger Bannister completed the distance in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. After that, it was as if explosions echoed across the world, as the 4-minute mile was broken again and again and again. Once the belief that it was impossible collapsed, a completely new paradigm emerged, and today running 4-minute miles is relatively common. What this illustrates is that it would take only one person publicly demonstrating the ability to levitate their body, openly revealing this capability to the world, to trigger an ultimate revelation. Such an event would likely cause tremendous chaos, as belief systems and paradigms shifted across the globe, and humanity began to step into a new, ascended reality. Then again, as we have seen repeatedly throughout history, there are countless ways in which ideas like this are concealed, mocked, insulted, or avoided entirely. The mainstream world tends to focus attention on very specific topics at very specific times, guiding both individual and collective behavior through tools ranging from fear to censorship. If there is one lesson to take from this entire conspiracy theory of everything, it is that this information exists, yet it is not the most important concern for most people. As long as mainstream narratives continue to dictate global conversation, and spirituality remains hidden or disguised within entertainment as mere fiction, these future transcendent realities may remain just beyond our reach. Ultimately, it is up to each of us to make personal choices that guide us toward what we truly want, while recognizing that along the upward path toward transcendence lies an ever-growing mountain of traps. The demiurge is exceedingly clever, and it will not release its grip unless you shine your light brightly enough to free yourself from the veil of the night. For the very nature of the demiurge is to draw us ever deeper into illusion, and it is our personal journey to consciously find a way beyond it. But of course, all of this is simply a theory, a conspiracy theory of everything. And the truth is, this vision is one of the core intentions we hold within our own mystery school, which was created to support and encourage the evolution of consciousness for those who are genuinely willing to do the work and commit fully to the path. Every single day, this expanding community is actively engaging in discussion and effort toward that shared purpose, while recognizing that reaching it requires healing our inner wounds, restoring balance to our energies, and taking bold steps forward into fully embodying the highest expression of our souls. And so, if this message resonates with you, and you feel called to join us on this journey and in this work, please use the link below to come and experience spirit mysteries for yourself. And together, may we rise beyond this place and transcend into the light.